Some fussy little foodie dishes for you and all your friends. Welcome back to the show, Ted. What sort of stupid, over-elaborate, fancy-ass meal are you going to make for us today?
We're going to cook one of the very most pretentious dishes in my cookbook.
Oh.
It's a stupid, trendy piece of fish coated in some kind of nut you've never heard of, served alongside a puree of baby something or other.
Oh, great!
Sounds annoying.
Let's get started.
Okay, have at it.
First, it's very important to choose the most expensive type of fish you can find for some vague environmental reason that you can then pair it back to your faux intellectual gay wad dinner party guests.
Okay.
And now I assume all these other ingredients are organic and locally sourced and all that bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what about the pureed baby turnips, Ted?
You must blanch them for 30 seconds, then you shock them in an ice bath. Peel them, then boil them again with a little sugar, thyme, and a pinch of salt.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Well, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, remember, we have a daily podcast called Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. If you like what you're hearing tonight, you're going to love what you hear every single day from our 1,382 episodes on Good Morning Liberty. You can watch on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey, or just find it on your favorite podcast app. I posted this video of Trump on the Andrew Schultz podcast. I don't know what it's called. I'm just calling it Andrew Schultz podcast right now. I got to tell you, this is one of the best things he's ever done. I want to play this clip because it's hilarious, talking about the one strength Joe Biden has over him, and it's good stuff.
He has one ability I don't have. Yeah, he sleeps. He can sleep. This guy goes on a beach and he lays down on one of those, 6 ounce. They weigh 6 ounces and he can't lift it. Yeah. They're meant for children, young people, and old people to lift. Yeah. They're aluminum, hollowed aluminum. They weigh very little, and he can't lift. And somebody convinced him he looks great in a bathing suit. And when you're 82, typically bathing suits aren't going to make you look great. You're not going to be enhanced. Yeah. All right? It's just one of those things. I can't be sure about that, but typically you don't.
Depends what he's packing. He could.
I don't know what the hell he's packing, but I don't want to, and I don't want to know either. I don't know, but he has an ability to fall asleep while on camera. He can lie down on one of those things, and in minutes, he's stone cold out.
How does he do it?
And he's got cameras because he's the president, so they have cameras on him. And then they show him sleeping on the beach. You'll never see me sleeping in front of camera.
How do we get you better at that? Like, what can we do? How do we work on that as a country?
It's hilarious.
Oh.
Yeah, I think those things do a really great job at humanizing him, for sure. He seems like a pretty funny dude. I had another update before we get to the meat of today's conversation, which will still end up being pretty short. Lieutenant Dan survived the storm, which broke up really before it even got to Florida. Didn't end up being as bad as, I'm sure it was still bad. A lot of houses got destroyed, places flooded.
There were tornadoes,
tons of tornadoes all over the place. I haven't heard about like casualties and stuff yet, but still bad, of course, but not as apocalyptic as everyone was saying it was going to be. Government.
So not as unprecedented.
Yeah, well, that's how far the government has fallen. They can't even create a good hurricane anymore. They're getting all the hurricane parts from China these days, and they're just not even able to complete that simple task of sending a hurricane into Florida anymore. Which is why you can't trust them with anything, really.
Because we moved all the hurricane creation offshore.
Yeah.
We need to bring it back home.
We want hurricane manufacturing jobs to be brought back into the U.S., and then we can finally get the job done. If you can't trust them to make a hurricane, how are they going to do Medicare?
Yeah.
They can't.
Exactly.
Come on, man.
Now.
All right, so Lieutenant Dan survived the storm. I had seen reports that he was getting forcefully removed from his boat and all that.
I saw that too. I mentioned that yesterday, but it looks like he was able to stay.
Apparently didn't happen. I want to play his response to this, and this is serious because the end of it is really good, like serious good, where it could have been on White Pill Wednesday or something like that. So this is his video the morning after.
We got the boat here, and Lieutenant Dan here. How'd it go? How'd the night go?
It was a little rough till about 11:30. I repositioned the boat, and I was heading into the wind, and I slept like a baby from 12:30 to 5 o'clock this morning. I woke up twice to pee, that was it. But other than that, I mean, it's been a great night. I just smoked half a joint. I'm high, I'm watching all the people run around like crazy because of all the water. The water went up. It was up to here last night. It was over the pole.
There's the boat, still standing.
I mean, I believe me, I got battered against the tire, but other than a couple of scuff marks on the side, my boat's in better shape now than it was before because it got washed. So, I mean, everything's a plus. It's a win-win all the way around.
What'd you learn from this experience?
Not a damn thing. No. There are a lot of good people in this world, and I gave up on this world years ago because I've been on my own, and, I mean, I struggle every freaking day just living. And never anybody offers to help. Never. But Terrence here posted this video, and it started getting likes, and then people started realizing that, you know, maybe he's not just crazy, maybe he really does need help.
Of course, man, let's go.
And people came out and helped me. We moved my boat from down over here, where I would have got smashed last night on the wall. And we brought it over here.
Yup.
And one of the guys is actually a sailor, so he kind of knew how to rig it. So, and then once he was done, I could modify it and make everything work better.
So
How about that?
Yeah, I really like the end of the video where he, you know, what he learned from this was that there's a lot of good people in the world.
There's still some good people out there.
Yeah, so that was cool. I'm
Not
sure,
many.
not a lot. Not too many, but if you get a viral video, apparently you get a lot of people coming out there trying to help you, trying to convince you to get somewhere safe. And someone came and helped him move his boat to a safer location. And, you know, so that's cool. Keep that in mind. It's pretty cool. I still think it was kind of dumb to stay in your boat. They're in a hurricane, but whatever. This is America.
I wonder if it would have been like a Cat 5 if it would have been the same story.
Probably not. I would say if it would have gone the way everyone was saying it was going to go, then yeah, I don't know if we would have had this video today of this guy. But anyhow, I mean, they were also talking apocalypse. They were telling people to write their name and number and closest relatives on their arms so they could identify who they were when they found their bodies.
Yeah,
that's hardcore. I'll tell you what. I would think that was Big Sharpie that got the mayor to tell everyone to do that because it turned out to not be the case. Yeah. But yeah,
imagine the people that got the tattoos of that from Big Ink.
I know, from Big Ink, the big tattoo.
Yeah.
All right, I want to get into the meat of today's conversation for like 10 minutes. Tim Walz recently said that the Electoral College needs to go.
Of course.
There's been a lot of talk about the Electoral College over the last few weeks or so, really heating up in the last week or so. To me, I take that as kind of a signal that people think Trump is going to win the Electoral College and Kamala is going to win the popular vote. That's sort of what I'm taking away from it, especially with Tim Walz out there saying the Electoral College needs to go. I feel like he's had a meeting where they said, hey, you guys are probably going to lose the Electoral College, just so you know. You're doing great whipping up the popular vote and all that, but I don't think you're going to win.
Internal polling shows, this isn't looking good.
So I wanted to talk about this idea for a minute. Like Jimmy Dore, you know who Jimmy Dore is, he posted a response to this poll. The poll was, should the U.S. keep the Electoral College? And no was 58% of the people, and yes was 39% of the people. So in this post on Political Polls, only 39% of the respondents wanted to keep the Electoral College. They want to go to a popular vote system. And Jimmy Dore says, I'm always amazed how many people want more than one vote per person, which is about 39% of Americans. He's talking about the Electoral College. They fear they wouldn't like the outcome if everyone's vote counted the same, so they like a system that gives some people more votes and some less. It's not
That's not how it works.
That's not the case. There are a handful of independent voters and a handful of swing states that end up choosing our president every 4 years. Politicians don't even bother campaigning where most of the people live. They campaign primarily in a handful of states, trying to appeal to a small number of independent, undecided voters. There's no shortage of arguments to keep the Electoral College, each one worse than the next. But the real reason is the 38% want to keep the Electoral College is that they don't like everyone having equal input and equal say in the outcome of a presidential election, and they want to tilt the playing field to their advantage. No matter what they say, that's the real reason, and it's anti-democratic and wrong.
No matter what they say.
No matter what they say.
That's the real reason.
What I have said is what it is. I don't think it's that they don't like everyone having equal input. I do think there's a considerable amount of people that are worried that they wouldn't like the popular vote outcome. Although it's only been 5 elections in U.S. history where the popular vote in the Electoral College ended up not being on the same side. There were 3 previous to Bush. I think it goes all the way back to John Quincy Adams. And I'm acting like I have this off the top of my head, but I looked it up. It was John Quincy Adams, Rutherford B. Hayes, Benjamin Harrison. So those were all in the 1800s.
Which everyone remembers his,
tyrannical rule
presidency
from Benjamin Harrison. One of the worst I'd seen.
Oh, I thought he was one of the best.
Actually, he was probably pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, just because most presidents are pretty terrible. But then he had George Bush and Donald Trump. And so those are the 5 elections where that was the case. It's not a super common occurrence. But I think there's a lot of people who are worried about the popular vote outcome. The problem that Jimmy Dore has is that he doesn't understand why we have that system at all. And the way I would say it is that we have 50 separate states. People.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the way to make this a fair election, and the reason why it's set up this way is because there's something called state interest. The states have an interest in who the president is going to be because the states are the one who created the federal government to begin with. So the way in which they set the system up now, you have to remember we used to elect U.S. senators by the state legislature. So every state got to decide what two people...
Was it the legislature or was it the governor?
It was the legislature.
Did the governor nominate them and then the legislature confirmed? Or I'm asking real question here. I actually don't know how it was before the 17th Amendment.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the legislature would nominate and vote.
Okay. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I don't know.
I believe, though, if that a senator retired or left their duty or something like that, the governor could appoint someone to take their place.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
So anyway, and the reason why this was set up is because the states wanted to make sure that the federal government wasn't going to usurp their power. And that was vitally important. The same thing when it comes to elections. The reason why there's an electoral college is because you want to make sure that Montana has the same voting power and equal voting power as California does, despite the difference in population. And so the reason why it's not a popular vote is because Wyoming didn't want California's will imposed on it.
Yeah.
And at the time, it wasn't obviously those states. I think we had 13 or 14.
And you do get a little bit more representation in the Electoral College if you're a smaller state, because each state has 2 senators. California has 2, Montana has 2. And so Montana has a lower amount of congressmen and women. They still have 2 senators there. And so they get a little bit more proportional representation. And that's because our country is not set up as a democracy. It's set up as a republic. And they knew that they wanted to protect the rights of the minority from the will of the majority, because the founders knew that democracy was tyranny. And that's why we have this sort of weighted system. Now, California still has way more electoral votes than Montana does, because of their population. But the senators help. I think the 17th Amendment, changing the way that we have senators, has really clouded everyone's view on this, because you're supposed to have the representatives that represent the people, and you're supposed to have the senators that represent the states. And now we have representatives that represent the people and senators that are elected by the people in the states that also are just representing the people. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't really make sense. The constituents of the senators has changed. Yeah, it used to be the state was the constituent of the senator, and now it's just the people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really make any sense.
And what Zach here says, repeal the 16th and 17th. That's true. We should get rid of direct income tax and get rid of how senators are elected. It needs to revert back.
I actually think the 17th is one of the worst ones. I mean, it's right up there with the 16th in my opinion, because I mean, you look at the amount of states.
And the 19th.
And the 19th, and the 13th. Can we be serious for 5 minutes?
No.
5 minutes.
No, I don't like seriousness.
All I'm asking. So the problem is that you don't understand.
You went a little Fuente on us there.
The country is set up where you're voting not as one nation voting together for who the president is over this whole nation. You're voting inside your state for who your state is going to say they believe the president should be. Because we have 50 states, and at the time, it was way less states. We have 50 states that are supposed to exist independently, and they came together and they said, let's all come together and create this federal government. Probably a bad idea, but that's what they did, okay? And so they, like you said earlier, they created the federal government itself. It's not the other way around. They created it. And so it is, who is this state going to say the president should be? So the people, through popular vote in their state, vote for who that state is going to say the president should be. Okay, that's...
And each state gets a quasi-equal vote.
Yeah, according to their population size.
Yes. So it's still kind of based on population size and democracy.
But I wanted to approach something real quickly because we're doing a short show here today.
But I also want people to think of it this way, okay? The Europeans used the same model in creating the European Union, okay? Because you have all these separate countries, think of them as states, that decided to band together to create the European Union to delegate some of the powers to the European Union because they thought that it would strengthen them. Now, there's obviously a lot of differences, but it works similarly in that the different countries of the European Union have a voice in who leads the European Union, and they can change that through a democratic process of the states or the countries of that European Union. And it works the same. The United States kind of set this precedent because it works really well. It works really well in keeping power checked. Now, of course, they found ways to work around that. Largely through propaganda and manipulation, but it's vitally important because a true democracy can be just as tyrannical as an authoritarian monarchy.
True democracy is very tyrannical. I want to tell you something that I think a lot of people don't think about before you have to go, because I know you got to go in like 2 minutes. People are worried that it looks like maybe Kamala is going to win the popular vote. Biden won the popular vote. Clinton won the popular vote. Al Gore won the popular vote. And I think people think that if we got rid of the Electoral College, well, that just means the Democrats are going to win from now until the end of time. But there's something that happens when you have an Electoral College system like this. Take Tennessee, where we live, as an example. It's going to go 65% for Trump. It went 63% for Trump in 2020. It's going to go 65% for Trump. If I'm a Trump voter, I don't really have to go vote that day, Also, if you're a Kamala voter, maybe you want to go vote just to make your voice heard, but there's no point in going and voting. It's going to go 65% for Trump. And so there's actually a lot more Kamala votes that would happen in Tennessee than you actually end up getting on election day, because a bunch of those people just decide it's pointless. So you could say, well, Kamala would actually get a lot more votes in Tennessee if we had a popular vote system nationally. That same thing goes for New York. I was looking at the polling numbers and then what the actual outcome is. When they do polls, they do it either likely voters or registered voters. So registered voters shows it being a lot closer most of the time. You might have Trump at 55% registered voters in New York and 63% likely voters. What's the difference there? A bunch of people who want to vote for Trump are just going to decide to not go vote on election day because it's pointless and they're busy that day and traffic's bad and they don't want to go spend the time to do it. Kamala's going to win New York. Why would I go and vote today? It's a waste of my time. And so while you might say Kamala would win more votes in Tennessee, Trump would win more votes in New York.
Are you saying that more people would come out to vote if it was a
popular vote? The Electoral College ends up telling you, well, it's kind of pointless for me to go vote today if your state is super hard in one direction or the other. Now, that's the case in a couple really big populous states like New York and California, where you might have 6 or 7% more people that would go vote for Trump if they thought that it actually was going to matter and it wasn't just going to be the Electoral College votes for New York or California go for that person.
I think so. I think a case study on that might be Florida. Have you looked at? Might want to take a look at Florida because it's flipped, back and forth. So does that bring more? Does a larger percentage of the population of Florida actually go out to vote because their vote matters more?
Yeah, I want to look into that because what you could find is if there's a 5% more people that vote for Trump in New York and in California, what you could end up finding is that ends up just in New York and California being a couple million more votes for Trump just in those two states. Now, you'd also potentially have that same case in Texas and Florida, which also have really large populations. But my main point here is that we actually don't know what the popular vote outcome would be. We look at the popular vote outcome after it's been skewed by the Electoral College, where you have many very, very highly populated states that go really hard in one direction or the other, and you might have 1 million people or more that just decide to not go vote because they know what direction their state's going to go. And so what I would tell you is if you're worried about the Electoral College being gotten rid of because you wouldn't like the popular vote outcome, I wouldn't immediately go in that direction because we have no idea what the popular vote outcome would look like if we didn't have an Electoral College. I think actually a lot more people would go out and vote. Not always necessarily a great thing, but I think a lot more people would go out and vote. And you don't really know how many more voters there are in those high population states that could swing it in one direction or another. Look at the difference between the registered voter polls and the likely voter polls. Why is that the difference? Some of the times it's likely voters because not everyone goes out and votes. Some of the times it's likely voters because a lot of these states, people decide that they're not going to vote because it's pointless. So that's not automatic. The reason that you want to keep the Electoral College is because of the way that the country was set up in the first place by the states. The way the federal government was formed in the first place by the states. It's not because you want one person to win, one person to lose. Nothing like that. It's because that's the way the country is set up in the first place, and it makes sense. That's how you're supposed to keep the federal government's power checked, and the states are supposed to be these essentially separate sovereign nations that came together to form a federal government to take care of a very limited amount of things. And getting rid of the Electoral College, which isn't going to happen, it would take a constitutional amendment to do this, but people, they use it to delegitimize an election if they don't like the outcome. And when you constantly delegitimize the elections, you eventually tear apart kind of the fabric of the whole thing, But I think it's important to realize why we actually have it, why it's important, why they set it up that way. And this whole popular vote thing, it doesn't even matter. That's not the way that we're set up.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States is demanding that Israel boost aid access to Gaza and warns that failure to do so would risk cutting off some U.S. military assistance. In a letter, the Biden administration instructed its Middle East ally to act within 30 days on a series of concrete measures, expressing deep concern about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the war-torn Palestinian territory. From Washington, Benji Haya reports.
This letter amounts to the strongest known written warning yet from the White House, urging the Israeli government to allow for a greater distribution of aid in Gaza for at least the next 4 months. Israel's ground offensive has forced millions of Palestinians to evacuate their homes to temporary camps, exposing them to dangerous diseases. Last month, his army denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between North and South Gaza. US law prohibits sending weapons to countries that prevent the delivery of American humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, the World Food Programme says that all major crossings into the north of the Gaza Strip have been closed, with no food aid having entered the area since October the 1st. Jody Jacobs has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The World Food Programme says the last remaining food supplies in the north have all been distributed to shelters and health facilities, but adds that it is not sure how long it will last, as no fresh supplies have entered since the beginning of October. The Israeli military insists that its operations are targeting terrorist infrastructure embedded inside civilian areas, adding that it is in fact facilitating humanitarian and particularly medical aid to residents.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are spending the coming hours bouncing between battleground states as the U.S. presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. Vice President Harris will head to Michigan, while the former president's set to touch down in Illinois and Georgia. U.S. correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
With the race for the White House on a knife edge, Donald Trump is headed to Chicago for an interview about the economy before rallying in Georgia, a state that Joe Biden narrowly won by just 0.3% in 2020. It follows an event for Mr. Trump which veered wildly off script after 2 audience members required medical assistance after passing out. The former president decided to stop taking questions. Instead, for half an hour, he stood dancing and swaying to rock music. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is attending an event in Detroit with the radio show The Breakfast Club and one of its hosts, Charlamagne the God. The show is popular with black voters, a demographic critical to the vice president's election hopes.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
What's up, everyone? This is Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And as always, Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash with fees of less than a penny per transaction. Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies, and they're widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Mayor Protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. Thank you so much to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That is dash.org. And as always, I also have to tell you that we have a daily podcast called Good Morning Liberty. You can find that on your favorite podcast app. You got 1,382 episodes that you can listen to. You can watch on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. You can even join our Fed Haters Club. Join gml.com so you can hang out with us live for every single one of these shows and participate in the voting for Dumb Bleep of the Week, everyone's favorite episode. So I want to get through a few pieces of the news that occurred over this weekend. Number one, the initial news broke that there was a potential third assassination attempt on Donald Trump. It's not the case whatsoever. I'll go ahead and tell you that right now. But it's police overreacting to a guy that had guns in his car. But we'll go ahead and talk about how this started.
So they 0 for 3 now?
This was not an assassination attempt at all.
Yeah.
This is a guy. This is he's in the movement, got a media company himself called America Happens. Vim Miller, is that what his name is? Did the thing that your instructor, when you go get like your permit or whatever to be able to carry a gun, if you're in one of those states, they'll tell you like, oh, when a cop comes up to your car, you should maybe just go ahead and tell them whether or not you have a gun in your car. And I've always thought that was weird. Like, why does it matter to this cop who's standing next to my window that there is a gun somewhere in the car?
Yeah.
I don't plan on pulling it out.
Right.
I'm not going to do anything with it. Now, for some reason, they decided to do an illegal search of my car against my will, then I would probably say, hey, just so you know, there's a gun right there in that thing.
But I don't consent to the search.
Yeah, but I don't consent. And then they put me in cuffs and I'm like, there's a gun in the glove box! And just yelling at them, trying to let them know. There's no reason to tell someone who you don't think is going to be inside your car whatsoever that you've got guns on you.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in California, okay? And you forget that you just told them that you've got a bunch of illegal stuff in your car. Like it's not a good idea to do that. Anyway, here's the sheriff who definitely says that they stopped a third assassination attempt.
So this is what I'm glad
on the
of.
right.
This is what I am very glad of. I know that the presence that we had at the rally with deputies, with snipers, with counter snipers, and Secret Service snipers and counter snipers, I am glad that we're not talking about this after we shot him. We get to talk about it before, and no matter what, it's all going to be speculation about what his intentions were getting there. What we do know is he showed up with multiple passports with different names, an unregistered vehicle with fake license plate, and loaded firearms. If you're asking me right now, I probably did have deputies that prevented the third assassination attempt. If we are that politically lost, that we have lost sight of common sense and reality and reason, that we can't say that, holy crap, what did he show up with all of that stuff for and loaded guns, and I'm going to be accused of being dramatic. We have a serious, serious problem in this country because this is common sense and reason. I saw some of you there yesterday.
Okay. He goes on to say, none of you guys had guns.
It's
You didn't have guns and fake IDs.
Okay.
Clearly a CIA plant.
Yeah.
Multiple passports.
So at first, like when I saw this, I was like, okay, well, fake IDs, fake license plates, stuff like that, whatever. When I heard about the guns, like they arrest a guy with a bunch of guns in his car, I was like, okay, well, that's nothing wrong with having a bunch of guns in your car.
Mm-hmm.
State of California might have problems with it.
Ain't nothing wrong with having a bunch of loaded guns in your car.
As an American, ain't nothing wrong with that. I don't know if it's illegal to have a fake ID and, unless you use it. Can you have a fake ID? It's probably illegal, right? It's probably illegal to have a fake ID, I bet.
Especially in California.
Yeah, unless you're an immigrant. So there's probably there's a video from this guy. This is the dude. So he's out, although California, I'm sure, is going to try to put him in prison for a bit. But he is currently out right now. And this is what he has to say.
And they've been fine. They've been fine.
Some of what he has to say.
The critical mistake I made is, I guess, forgetting the location that I was in California. So
was he released?
I drive up with my special entry pass. And by the way, they're saying I had a counterfeit pass. That's a bunch of nonsense. I could prove that I had a special entry pass directed to me, sent directly to me by officials within the Republican Party of Nevada. I was an actual invitee to that event. So as I'm driving, there's an area where you enter the parking lot after you pass a sheriff. I pull up to the sheriff. I say, I should take that back. I'm not 100% sure he was a sheriff. He was wearing a sheriff vest, but a lot of those individuals were. And my assumption is that not everybody there was a sheriff. They were just trying to indicate that they worked with the sheriff's department.
Deputies.
Yes.
And so I drive up to this sheriff and I tell him that, in full transparency, I just want to let you know in the back of my truck, I got, 2 lawful firearms, purchased lawfully, registered lawfully. And I'm just letting you know that that's back there as a courtesy, which is a courtesy that I always do.
I feel like that's something that people do because they want to feel like cool or whatever with the cop that they're talking to. I don't understand the reason why you do it.
Also, why would you bring him to a rally?
He traveled several hours. He was talking about how he's normally in Nevada and stuff like that. And, like I drove to DC for the Libertarian Convention and had a loaded gun in my backpack, which I took into the hotel where Trump spoke like the next day. And it's just, when I left my house, I wasn't thinking about what the gun laws were.
Did you try to get it through security?
No.
Did you try to get it through a secure location?
No.
Did you walk up where they were scanning you and be like, hey, I got a loaded pistol in my backpack?
That's the dumb part. Like, why would you tell someone this? It makes no sense.
Did you bring it to see Trump speak in the convention hall, or did you leave it in your hotel room?
I left it in my hotel. I put it in the safe.
Why would you do something like that? How un-American.
I didn't want to go to prison.
God.
Was the main reason.
And, man. This guy's an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know if he's trying to assassinate Trump, but he's an idiot. I'll tell you that much.
I had no idea why you would tell the cops that you have some loaded guns.
Is this dumb bleep of the week?
It seems like dumb bleep of the week. So he tells them that. They get freaked out. They decide to have him pull over. They arrest him. They go through his car. They find some fake IDs. Allegedly, it looks like the sheriff said that his license plate was fake or maybe with a different vehicle or whatever. And there were reports that he had fake media passes too. He says he has proof. These were directly sent to him by people in the Republican Party. This guy has a big media platform. America Happens is a big media platform. They've done several documentaries on the deep state, stuff like that. He is a Trump supporter. And so people kind of jumped on this as a third assassination attempt pretty quickly. The cops probably just a little overzealous and wanting to talk about how they prevented the third assassination attempt. He goes on to say later on that he heard the police officer, the arresting police officer, call him one of those dumb Trump supporters, like after they put him in the car. And so we'll see if there's body cam that backs all that up. But he says that they were basically trying to make an example out of him after they found out that he was a Trump supporter or whatever, and that they knew it was an assassination attempt. But then it goes to the FBI and the Secret Service, and it turns into a thing. But he's been released, clearly, and I just want to let everyone know that that's not what this was. And when you hear about this, like my first reaction was, there's a guy with guns in his car. That means nothing to me. There's nothing wrong about having guns in your car. They said he had a high-capacity magazine. Okay, so he's super safe. All right, he's in California. All right. He sounds like a guy.
He didn't have a rifle or anything, though, right? It was a shotgun?
A shotgun, and then I think a handgun, and then they said something about a high-capacity magazine, but they never mentioned that he had a rifle. They just said high-capacity magazine.
Yeah.
Which would be kind of funny in California if you're just let's say you're driving and you have none of the other guns, but you just have a high-capacity magazine, and they stop you.
30 rounds.
Yeah. That's it, no gun.
There's no rounds in
it. So there's nothing wrong about having guns. That's totally fine. So you can't immediately say, oh, there's a guy with guns at the Trump rally. Like, come on, man, this is supposed to be America. That's supposed to be fine. There ain't nothing wrong with having guns. That just means that's the guy you want to find if the crap hits the fan.
This guy's still an idiot, though.
Oh, yeah, super dumb.
Yeah.
Real dumb stuff.
Several dumb things.
Yeah, a lot of dumb things happen right then. Don't tell the cops that you have a gun. There's no reason to tell the cops that you have a gun.
Not only that, but I mean, okay, there's been 2 assassination attempts, and you're going to see Trump. And you probably shouldn't bring a gun with you.
No.
If you're going to go.
No, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I understand leaving and forgetting that you have multiple loaded weapons in the back of your car when you're going to a rally. I've forgotten several times that I, it's right there in my backpack. I've gotten in the car to go to the airport before with it in my backpack. I went to DC to the hotel where Trump was speaking with the gun in my backpack. And, I was worried about getting pulled over. What if they pull me over? And, luckily that didn't happen. And I would not have immediately told them when they walked up to the car window, like, hey, they've got a concealed weapon in that bag right there. We're alike, you and me.
Yeah.
We're fine.
Yeah.
We're on the same level. You've got a gun. I've got a gun. We're cool. No, that's dumb. Something else that's dumb. It's not supposed to be dumb bleep of the week. But we're sending 100 U.S. troops to Israel to man the anti-air batteries. Okay. They're expecting an attack from Iran and, Hezbollah, all this stuff going on. Retaliations for retaliations. And now we're going to send 100 troops there to run the anti-air batteries. Charlie, is this boots on the ground? It's not boots on the ground.
That sounds like boots on the ground.
Are these troops in a combat zone?
Yeah.
Because I was told we don't have any troops in combat zones. I mean, I guess they haven't said that since now, but
sounds like it is.
Seems like boots on the ground in a war, and this is clearly what I call, and what a lot of people call, bait on hook. Because now they're intentionally putting U.S. troops in harm's way in a country that's taking fire, like hundreds of rockets all the time. Iran's trying to bomb that. Iran just hit them with a bunch of missiles a couple weeks ago. Hezbollah throwing a bunch of rockets over there. Rockets over there.
Oh.
And they're just going to send some U.S. troops, put them in harm's way. Yeah. What happens when one of them gets killed? What happens when a few of them
when they get harmed. So they're in harm's way.
They are.
That way harms them.
It does.
And then now, of course, we need a full-scale response.
Well, we have to. They killed some of our troops.
Yep.
So, of course we do.
All right. So all this means at least 100 American soldiers will be placed in positions likely to be targeted by another potential barrage of ballistic missiles from Iran at a moment Israel is preparing its own counterattack in the wake of the October 1st strikes, which witnessed about 200 missiles sent on Israel's territory from the Islamic Republic. Each full missile battery and associated systems cost the American taxpayers some $800 million to $1 billion.
That's pretty crazy. So more information on this as we get it. Just want to let you know that's a development over the weekend. And then a really cool development over the weekend. We had the thing with SpaceX and Starship. I'm going to tie this into real quick the news that came out of California, which is that they're blocking SpaceX because of Elon Musk's politics. But, the whole catching a rocket in the air with chopsticks, I don't know if people understand how cool this is.
So think about too, this thing weighs about 250 tons.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's super heavy, actually.
It's a super heavy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they caught it. Do you realize how perfect something has to happen for it to slide? Like, I know a lot of people who can't parallel park a car, let alone parallel park a skyscraper midair between two chopsticks.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so it's pretty crazy that this happened. This is one of the coolest engineering feats, whether you know it or not. If you're listening right now, whether you know it or not, this is one of the coolest, if not the coolest, human engineering feat that has happened in your lifetime or in the history of human beings. And it happened over the weekend.
Think about this. They did this in about 3 years, and they accomplished it on the first try.
Yeah.
It was about 3 years ago, Elon Musk did an interview talking about how they were designing a specific tower.
I thought it was ridiculous when I heard about it.
Yeah, a lot of people did. They thought it was crazy. And then they did it on the first try.
That's nuts.
First try.
Totally nuts. You know who was impressed?
And people think math is racist.
This is who was impressed. It was this guy right here. Let me show you.
So intense.
All the way. Didn't know that.
Oh my God.
Whoa, something
that's so intense. Whoa, man.
Oh, the original audio is right.
Whoa.
I didn't notice that.
Whoa.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh my god. What does this mean? Oh.
Holy shit.
Oh my god. Oh. Oh god. It's so bright. Oh my god, it's so bright and vivid. Oh! 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 Whoa! Whoa! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Woo! Oh! Wow! Woo! Yeah!
So the problem with this video is that we're too old.
Yeah.
That's the main issue. This is one of the...
That's a double rocket all the way across the sky. T-Dub got it.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the double rainbow video on YouTube, which has 51 million views and is one of the first viral YouTube videos that I ever saw from a long time ago, that is the audio from that video. That is not someone reacting to the SpaceX rocket coming down, just so you know.
But it is.
Although I think that reaction should be completely warranted, because this is, whether you know it or not, the coolest thing that any human being has ever seen, and in that video. So, you know, I think the reaction is warranted, but that's not a reaction to that. And even the reaction on Twitter was, I think this guy's getting way too excited about this. This is ridiculous. I'm like, it's the mother freaking double rainbow guy, okay?
Yeah.
Jeez. Am I the only one? Okay. Look up that video if you haven't seen it yet. No, the whole thing is pretty freaking amazing that they were able to do this. It's really cool that we live in this time. This is your kind of white pill for this moment. Super cool that we live in this time where we can, you know, we're going to land this booster, which takes 5 minutes to come back down. And then all they have to do after that is refuel it. And then it's ready. They have to refuel it and then restack it with a new Starship. And then it's ready to go again after that.
Probably reducing the cost by,
oh my gosh,
like 98%.
My God. And why?
Surely they have to check it out, though. I mean, there was lots of fires going on there.
They said they had a little bit of warping in a couple spots, but those are easily addressed. And then they say that they can achieve reflight of this booster within an hour after liftoff.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I think you get the idea that this is nuts.
Could you imagine going to the spaceport? You know?
Yeah. That's why it's called
flights.
That's why it's called Starbase.
Flights take off every 2 hours.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, so California was like, okay, well, these guys suck. And listen, they're not talking about launching starships from California, but California officials did cite Elon Musk's politics in rejecting SpaceX launches in California. Now, they're already launching a bunch of rockets. They're launching a bunch from Texas, from Florida. Be cool if they're launching a lot from California too. They launched some from California, and mainly happening in Texas and Florida right now, I'm pretty sure. But take this scenario here, and let's imagine that you had an anointed California politician who's now in the White House, who doesn't like Elon Musk's tweets. And all the stuff that we just talked about just then, which almost didn't happen anyway because of the FAA and stuff. I mean, they gave him clearance like 20 hours before they launched. The thing's just been sitting there for weeks on the pad waiting for the FAA, you know? And because the FAA is like, well, yeah, this thing's going to blow up. It's going to be a mess, you know? When it tries to come back down, then it fails. They work for the government, so, you know, they assume that it's not going to work.
NASA said it couldn't happen.
Yeah, because that's the life that they live. And so, anyway, Charlie, Elon Musk tweets about the presidential election and spreading falsehoods about Hurricane Helene are endangering his ability to launch rockets off of California's central coast.
His tweets.
The California Coastal Commission on Thursday rejected the Air Force's plan to give SpaceX permission to launch up to 50 rockets a year from Vandenberg Air Force Base in Santa Barbara County. Quote, Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims with free Starlink access to the internet. Commissioner Gretchen Newsom.
Another Newsom.
How about that? Said at the meeting in San Diego.
He literally posted text message proof that FEMA was blocking satellites. And also they were originally blocking helicopters from coming in to land.
The FAA was blocking them, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The agency's commissioners appointed by the governor and legislative leaders voted 6-4 to reject the Air Force's plan over concerns that all SpaceX launches would be considered military activity, shielding the company from having to acquire its own permits, even if military payloads aren't being carried. You see, they want to have to assign them a permit for every single launch that they do so they can hold that permit over his head every single time, and all that money that they might make off of whatever satellite they're launching, whatever it is that they're launching up there and getting paid for to do it. They want to be able to control each and every one of those. And if they give approval right now, well, he's just, there you go. It's going to be up to 50 in a year. It's, you know,
fire at whim.
Yeah, fire at whim. He can do whatever he wants. And turns out he tweeted, or he posted too many not factos, and they're just not going to let him do it. And that's a super scary thing to me.
There is a silver, I will say the slight silver lining.
What's that?
Is that look at state power. The state is rejecting the federal government,
the Air Force. Okay, fine.
The state of California is telling the United States Air Force, nay.
Okay, fine. You found one good thing out of this.
Hey,
the state told the Air Force that they can't do something. Okay.
I'm not saying what their decision's right.
Way to ruin my black pill, Charlie.
I'm just saying.
Coming here trying to throw out a black pill, warning for the future, and you're like, oh, no, the state just told the Air Force they can't do something.
I'm not saying it's right.
Dang it.
I'm just saying, however, look at that. Just look at it.
Just take a look at that.
And say, look at this.
So I do worry that
because imagine, like, if the Air Force wanted to come in, steal your property here in Tennessee, Nate.
Yeah.
So they could launch rockets off the lake, but they needed to commandeer your home.
Yeah.
And the state of Tennessee stepped in and said, no, not here. This is Nathaniel Paul Thurston of Good Morning Liberty.
Yeah. I like that.
And unless he voluntarily gives up his property, thou shalt not commandeer his property. And that would be a win for liberty.
It's probably your second biggest investment, especially lately. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Your car has been a pain at the pump, but gas prices aren't the only way you may be burning money. Have you had a minor fender bender? If it's just a dent, you might be able to save the deductible and keep your insurance premium as is. Grab your bathroom plunger, stick it into the middle of the dent, and pour hot water over the area. Then pull hard. Repeat as necessary. And if your headlights look foggy, skip that squirt bottle product. Simply rub on toothpaste. Let it sit for a minute, then rub off with a clean cloth. And that spray that restores your dashboard and other interior surfaces, save the money. Apply olive oil with coffee filters. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States is demanding that Israel boost aid access to Gaza and warns that failure to do so would risk cutting off some U.S. military assistance. In a letter, the Biden administration instructed its Middle East ally to act within 30 days on a series of concrete measures, expressing deep concern about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the war-torn Palestinian territory. From Washington, Benji Haya reports.
This letter amounts to the strongest known written warning yet from the White House, urging the Israeli government to allow for a greater distribution of aid in Gaza for at least the next 4 months. Israel's ground offensive has forced millions of Palestinians to evacuate their homes to temporary camps, exposing them to dangerous diseases. Last month, its army denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between North and South Gaza. US law prohibits sending weapons to countries that prevent the delivery of American humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, the World Food Programme says that all major crossings into the north of the Gaza Strip have been closed, with no food aid having entered the area since October the 1st. Jody Jacobs has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The World Food Programme says the last remaining food supplies in the north have all been distributed to shelters and health facilities, but adds that it is not sure how long it will last, as no fresh supplies have entered since the beginning of October. The Israeli military insists that its operations are targeting terrorist infrastructure embedded inside civilian areas, adding that it is in fact facilitating humanitarian and particularly medical aid to residents.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are spending the coming hours bouncing between battleground states as the US presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. Vice President Harris will head to Michigan, while the former president's set to touch down in Illinois and Georgia. US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
With the race for the White House on a knife edge, Donald Trump is headed to Chicago for an interview about the economy before rallying in Georgia, a state that Joe Biden narrowly won by just 0.3% in 2020. It follows an event for Mr. Trump which veered wildly off script after 2 audience members required medical assistance after passing out. The former president decided to stop taking questions. Instead, for half an hour, he stood dancing and swaying to rock music. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is attending an event in Detroit with the radio show The Breakfast Club and one of its hosts, Charlemagne the God. The show is popular with black voters, a demographic critical to the vice president's election hopes.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, more about the situation in the Middle East from a veteran observer of events in the region.
The Netanyahu policy of security at any cost isn't working.
That is Lord Peter Ricketts, a former senior British diplomat who chaired the UK's Joint Intelligence Committee under Prime Minister Tony Blair.
After a year of devastating attacks on Gaza, they have still not got military dominance over Hamas. Now with the war in southern Lebanon, I'm old enough, I'm afraid, to remember the 1982 war where Israel made a major ground invasion of Lebanon, went all the way to southern Beirut, were there in the south for 18 years after that, then again in 2006. I think the Israelis understand that time is against them in southern Lebanon, hence this sense of real urgency, whatever it takes, whatever the civilian consequences, to do the maximum damage to Hezbollah without being dragged into an occupation which will then put up Israeli casualties. I think, therefore, that there is a time limit there, but the way the Israelis respond to the Iranian missile attack, do they go after economic sites like oil and gas? Do they go after nuclear sites? My own feeling is they probably will not. I think the Americans are pushing very hard against that. And the Israelis know that they cannot alone destroy the Iranian nuclear program.
And the UN on Monday accused Israel of trapping Palestinian civilians in northern Gaza. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The US is demanding Israel boost aid access to Gaza, warning failure to do so would risk cutting off some US military assistance. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are bouncing between battleground states as the US presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. And NASA has launched a spacecraft to Jupiter's frozen moon, Europa, to look at whether the distant world has conditions suitable to support life. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
You're putting your name, address, credit card number, social security number, all that. You're just chucking it right up onto the internet where any disgusting degenerate can grab it. The only way to make sure that your identity is never stolen is to change it every 3 years. That's what I do. 2 years ago, I was Ellen Foxcroft, attorney at law. 3 years before that, I was Trish Homingwood, patient at the Austin State Psychiatric Hospital. And 3 years before that, I was Regina Dupree, lead singer of the soul group Derriere. And you know what? None of my identities has ever been stolen. So to make sure that your personal information stays safe, you gotta follow some simple steps. First, you're gonna need new pieces of identification, right? But don't worry, old Shelby knows a guy up in Detroit, can fix these up pronto, real cheap. Next, you're gonna have to fake your own death. But all that takes is a mold of your teeth, a corpse, and a $500 used car for setting on fire.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. Co-host Charlie's not here right now, but I am sitting down, kind of, online with Mr. TJ Hawthorne, who's running for Minnesota House District 44B as a libertarian. Right? As a libertarian, like an actual official big L libertarian. TJ, how you doing today?
Good, Nate. How are you doing? I'm actually, yes, the big L. I like to, hey, we're L libertarians, man. And many times I ask, why? Why are you running as libertarian? You're never going to win. But it's something with the logic and the reasoning that I can't just put myself into someone. I'm not a bandwagon jumper, and I know you're a Cowboys fan, and I know the Vikings are 5-0 this year, so we're welcoming all the bandwagon jumpers, but I just can't do that, and I've never been a follower. I can't just get on someone's train and say, oh yes, this is what we got to do, even though I know this and this and this are incorrect. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Why don't you give everyone a little bit of your bio?
Yeah, I appreciate this, Nate, very much. We don't get much opportunities to be in the public eyes. Yeah, my name's TJ Hawthorne, and yes, I'm running for state representative in Minnesota House District 44B. And as a libertarian, like I said, and my journey into libertarianism started just like many in the COVID years, right? Once that shit stuff started going down, it was mind blowing to me to see the people that were just afraid and say, yes, government, please government me harder. It blew my mind. And so I started listening to guys like you and Lions of Liberty and Dave Smith. And oh my gosh, my mind was blown. And, when I got out of the Navy in 2006, I really wanted to be a Republican politician. And some of the guys locally here, we're talking about, yes, we're taxed too much and spending too much of our money. And so all that stuff spoke to me. But the also thing they were talking about was the war on terror, the terrorists that we continued. We got to keep fighting. And I was all on board until I started listening to guys like you and Dave Smith. And that really then springboarded me right into libertarianism. And there's no way I can go back. I do dig some of these liberty-loving Republicans, and there are a lot of those in Minnesota here. There's a contingency here that they try to tell me, well, you just need to run as a Republican. Well, okay, I might be able to do some good in a Minnesota House. I do think most Republicans in the Minnesota House are very libertarian leaning, but the party machine of the Republicans and the Democrats just are unappealing to me. They're too following. You do this or else this. none of that happens in the Libertarian Party. One, because we need every member that we can get, right? Everybody that we can get, we're gonna take on board. Although that kind of gets into a messy situation too.
Yeah.
And all this crap. So honestly, I've toyed with the idea of just running as an independent. Cause that's who I am. I'm independent, but luckily the Minnesota Libertarian Party absolutely accepts me for who I am. I was telling you earlier how I'm actually a DOD contractor for this company I work for, and I've been doing this for 18 years. And through my evolution of being a staunch Republican, yes, let's go start these wars and stop this terrorism, to holy crap, this is what we're doing. And I'm a cog in this wheel of the military industrial complex that I absolutely despise now. But I can look at it in a way that I can go and do this work efficiently so that we're spending less of our money. And I have quite an influence on some of these young airmen and Marines and sailors that I get to speak with that, hey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fine to work in an industry like that. It's not like if you quit, it wouldn't exist anymore. It's not like the money wouldn't get doled out anymore. And so sometimes it's better to have a libertarian in those positions to make sure it's getting sent out in the most efficient way. Like you said, you've got the ear of some of the other airmen that are out there. It's probably a little bit of an internal conflict working, as a DOD contractor. But I mean, who else would you rather have in that position than other than a libertarian?
Exactly what I keep telling myself, man. I tell myself that every single day, and I represent, man. I carry my Pelican case toolbox. It's got libertarian stickers and all the different stuff. And I even have the dispensary stickers on the bottom so that they're not all that noticeable. But when I travel to the states where it's legal and I visit a dispensary, I'll represent there too. And sneak it in there a little bit, even though the military folks frown on this a little bit.
Frown on it. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Minnesota. You said you got some Liberty Republicans up there. You didn't say you had any Liberty Democrats, by the way, but you said you got some Liberty Republicans. And let's see, you've got a governor too that some people are paying attention to right now. Like what are politics like up there? And I guess we'll get into what kind of a difference needs to be made there in the Minnesota House.
The very first vote I ever casted in my adult life was for Jesse Ventura, and Minnesota shocked the world. And we elected a third party candidate, that was bringing change. And I do believe that the media stronghold got a hold of everything. And just like they did Trump, as far as, oh, look at everything dumb that he's doing when he was just trying to be genuine. You know what I mean? The jury's still out on Trump as far as how genuine he really is. But I think Jesse really was trying to do his thing. And then it just has gone so far to the left. But what you see, and you recognize this, I know this, that, oh, let's see, the little blue pocket of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Rochester and Duluth have all the population to just carry the state. And I know you and Chuck talked about it just yesterday, the 17th Amendment and the ways that we used to elect our senators and the actual constitutional republic that we should be representing in our federal system of government. It's blows my mind that to see how many ignorant folks believe, no, the government is here to give you stuff. It's here to protect you from this guy over here. No, the concept of government has just gone away, and many Minnesotans. But like I said, and yes, you're right, there are no Liberty Democrats. But the gentleman I'm running against, actually, in the forum we had about a month ago, he did say in one of his 2 minutes of answering the question, well, and he looks over at me, and my libertarian tendencies, and it's just like, oh yeah, okay, well, sweet. Here's the thing. That guy, I think, is one of these old school Democrats that are seeing some of the new stuff that's happening and their minds being blown, but they have the power of that big D machine that then will say, well, if you have this cushy job since 2002, you don't even have to campaign. You go to his website and it says, oh, folks, we made it through 2008. He's just automatically there. So he can automatically sign for any bills that these radicals are putting forth. And they've elected all kinds of activists, Democrat activists, to, well, now we got school lunches paid for. We've got family leave. And this is what Tampon Tim loves to spout on these shows. But he does not say that he's got tampons in the boys' bathrooms too. There's so many things these radical things that they pushed through in the last 2 sessions. It's just unreal. So there are, like I said, there's guys like this gentleman named Walter Hudson. I really like everything he says about Minnesota politics. And then October 7th happened last year. And then it was, there's the contrast. There's the difference between you and me. And yes, we can definitely work together in Minnesota. But if I were to get past that level, and then the Betty McCollum, who I don't know if you know who she is, but she's another one of these Democrats that just has a seat in the U.S. Congress. Nobody campaigns for her. It's just automatic. And so I'm trying to put a stop to that. I think my grassroots efforts, I ran in 22. I got 5% of the vote with minimal campaigning, some lit drops here and there. But we got a little bit more of a ground force this year and a little bit more media attention. I've used to talking to a few people better, here and there. So I'm just not a politician. I'm not used to selling myself.
Yeah. What does, what's it like being a libertarian if they're talking to people? I ask candidates this a lot, that like, how do people respond when you're talking to the normal, everyday normal guy? And a lot of people are fixed in what political party it is that they follow. And then they meet a libertarian. Like, are they receptive to it? Or are they just fixed on what party it is they're going to vote for? They're not open to it at all? Or do they agree with some of the things that you say and platform ideas and stuff like that? Like, what's it like talking to people?
Oh, agreeing, most definitely. Now, I'm a nice guy, so a lot of folks might just agree with you just to move on, right? Because they don't want to confront. But this actually was one thing that got me, hey, I can do this. Because yes, I travel the world and I get to talk to people all over the place, and your ideas are really great, but you just can't win as a libertarian. But you just said my ideas are really great. So what are you saying? That you only vote for a winner? So you're telling me that you aren't thinking for yourself. And so that does get people offended a little bit, but it makes them think. And I think that's what is going on. I think just like many folks have said, once they're impacted, they're going to start really looking into what's going on. And I think folks are really being impacted now. And I think that's really the gist of the conversations is hey, so what do you think of inflation? What do you think? And folks, some, just like you said, are very stuck into, no, printing money is the way to go. Don't you know that Greenspan won the Nobel Prize for economics? How do you argue with that? And dang it, how do you argue with this crap?
Yeah, that's they definitely run out all the experts out there to tell you what the right way to do everything is. And some people just pay attention to that. I mean, Minnesota had a lot of stuff go on, not just COVID. You also had all the George Floyd stuff and everything that happened during that time. I mean, I would guess there's probably been I might be wrong about this. I mean, I would guess there's been a pretty big change in the politics in Minnesota since all that happened. But do you think it's been for the better or the worse?
Not one bit for the better. Right. And yes, to talk about one of the best libertarians in Minnesota lives literally 2 blocks away from George Floyd Square, which is still a thing. He doesn't drive, so I got to drive down to South Minneapolis to pick him up for our events. And one day I was like, hey, George Floyd Square's around here somewhere, right? He's like, oh yeah. So we took a turn right around the block and it's all still there, everything. And it's nasty. I'm sorry, but I don't know where folks' minds are at, in the cities. Although I drive down Lake Street, which is, all the films that you saw about things burning and things being burnt down and riots and stuff right down that road. Cops don't go down there anymore. And so as a libertarian, it's kind of like, oh, what does this mean? And I see all the commerce and I see people, doing things during the day in these buildings and these shops, and they're still having this commerce happen. Then you talk to other folks that, hey, I've got to work down there. You leave your car in one spot for 20 minutes, it's getting broken into. So there is a factor of, is it the community here, or is this just folks getting by to get by? I don't know.
So I want to know a little bit about your philosophy on libertarianism. And, you said you're fairly new to it and everything. And really I am too. But I want to know a little bit about your philosophy, like what you think it means to be a libertarian. And then how how hard is it to talk to some of these other candidates? I watched that video that you sent, the YouTube video that you tagged in your email. And the first question they ask is about roads. It's like the first thing. And so like a libertarian, our answer is like, well, we don't need to be taking this money from the people in the first place. Like, it's not what they want to hear. They want to hear like, I've got a better plan for the roads than this person's plan for the roads. And when you come in as a libertarian, you're like, I kind of think that, private contractors and people should be able to find a way to work this out. Really, you got private companies building the roads in the first place, and we just got a middleman in between. And it sort of makes the entire conversation difficult because it's not an answer that just like anyone wants to entertain. And so do you try to have that philosophical libertarian conversation with people where you're like, yeah, we don't need to be taxing these people in the first place. Let's stop talking about the roads. Or are you more of like a practical, libertarian where, like, well, we got to have roads, we got to have police, got to have all these things that people throw at you when you talk about libertarianism. So like, what's your philosophy versus how you actually have to try to sell it to people when you're talking to people?
That's no different. I like a lot, and I think you do too, Larry Sharpe. Larry Sharpe's way of explaining these things and relating to these people and coming up with new ideas and presenting a new idea that could be shiny and like, because everyone you talk to will say, yes, I know it's all messed up, but this is where we're at now, and you must choose between one or the other. Like, but you don't. This is the thing with democracy, right? We get these choices, even though, the last 2 election cycles we get 2 weeks to do 500 signatures on these petitions just to get on the ballot. So, but going back to the question, and so I just think that is not democracy. But anyways, I believe in being consistent. Like, guys, and I promise you I'm not doing this just because you're sitting right there in front of my face. Guys like you and Chuck and Dave Smith and Ron Paul been consistent, right? And Larry Sharpe, they're consistent. And I don't want to waver, because then what kind of basis do I have to stand on? So there it is. Yes, I do believe in anarchy, and I love explaining what anarchy is. Actually, it's not chaos folks want to believe, and it's not the Sex Pistols vision of anarchy is this kind of just chaos crap, no law, no rules. That's not the way it is, right? And so I like using Michael Malice's vision of anarchy and showing folks that, man, we live in anarchy every day. We don't need the government to tell us what to do, and we do this every single day. And so I truly believe is being consistent. And like the roads, man, Larry Sharpe really got me going. I think his idea of, look at US Bank Stadium. They spend millions of dollars just to put their name on this taxpayer paid stadium. What the heck? Why don't they use these millions of dollars to build the dang stadium? And it's funny when you use the fear of economic turmoil to say, we must tax you more to build this big stadium, or else the city's just going to go underneath. Like, what? The city was there a long time before dang sports were there. And so the bread and circuses really do take over folks' mind. I mean, we talk about the Cowboys and Vikings early on. I'm a big fan. I won't spend $1 on the NFL, but I'll spend $1 gambling with my buddies on the games.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Was it was Minnesota's, was it there was a stadium that collapsed in the snow, right? The roof collapsed several years ago. I'm sure the taxpayers ended up being on the hook for building something new after that. I don't know how that worked out.
That was lovely. Yes. The big inflatable toilet, the Metrodome, on its last season. And it was already, the US Bank Stadium was already talked about and already planned on being built. So it was kind of just like an exclamation point on the end of its life.
I got you. So what are some of the things that, do you have one opponent? You got 2 opponents, a Republican, Democrat, and then you, and I don't know if anyone else is in the race as well. So I always ask some of the candidates this, like, well, this is an obvious one. What's the biggest differentiating factor? Well, it's going to be libertarianism. It's going to be the biggest differentiating factor. But like, what are some of the biggest problems with the people that you're running against? Maybe they're nice guys and girls. Maybe they're good people or whatever who just want to do good. But are there any specific policies that stick out to you where they're promising people something that's not going to go the way that they're promising. That's going to be an absolute mess, and that you think there's a better way to do it for sure. Like, what are some of those biggest issues with those guys?
Yeah, no, my biggest issue with a gentleman, his name is Leon Lilly, runs and he's been there since 2002. That's a big one that folks say, oh, he needs to go. That's too long. Okay. The thing is just like on that forum that I shared with you, he took some of his time to say something good about me. Out of his 2 minutes, he's like, oh, and I've heard nothing but good things about TJ volunteering at the food shelf in North St. Paul. And I'm looking at him like, what the heck? And then after it was over, we took the mics off and he's talking almost like he wants to support me. and then I get done talking with him. I walk over here. I need to go to the bathroom, but there's his daughter right there saying, hey, nice to meet you. I'm your neighbor. I live 2 doors down. And like, holy cow. And his wife also wanted to meet me, and they're being extremely kind. And I don't know how to take that quite, because it doesn't match up with any of the politics that you see on TV or the YouTubes,
Well,
so
he wants your 5%.
I don't know what it is, but he also, tries to claim that he's libertarian. I believe he is a nice guy, and I believe he is an old school Democrat that he said to me, to my face, I think it's great that you're running. I think it'd be nice to have new faces in there. And if it's my time to go, it's my time to be done. And I'm thinking, you can say that, but you have this party behind you that will support you staying in that seat just because it's one more seat of theirs, right? If they give up to, this. So I don't see any real problems with him other than he is just another cog in that dumb machine of the Democrats. And I think that's how they see him. And if he were to move on, then there would be some real campaigning between me and an opponent. The Republican that has run in 22 and now the one that's running this year, they're just paper candidates, right? They pay the $150 filing fee and they get on the ballot. He hasn't shown up to anything. I haven't seen him campaign in anything. They truly believe it's an unwinnable race. And I don't know how they think this. My town of North St. Paul and Oakdale, they're very purple towns. They're suburban towns, man. And I truly believe that folks are ready for another option. That's really just where I'm sitting. I've always hated the politics of bashing the other guy, because that's what we've come to.
Yeah.
Well, let's vote for the lesser of two evils.
Isn't it weird how so many people agree that, you look at something like Congress, which has a crazy low approval rating. I don't know what the actual number is anymore. I haven't looked in a long time. It's probably around 10% or something like that. And so many people think we don't need these politicians that are in office for 20 years, 30 years at a time. But then they just keep getting in every single time. It's like the votes are just baked in, even though so many people say that they agree that these people shouldn't be there. And what do you think that is? I guess I could say maybe they just do a good job making people afraid of the other guy getting in there. Is that what it is?
I think it absolutely is fear. It's either fear of change, right? And I know Minnesotans are really into their comfort zone, man. That I go fishing in the wintertime. I go fishing in the summertime. I do some snowmobiling. These gals are set into that, what they're comfortable doing. And if you take that away, then they're freaking out. And so I think that's a lot of what Jesse Ventura did to Minnesota, was make people freak out a little bit about the change. And so they're just set. Oh, I'm wearing my Democrat hat and this is where I vote blue because this is what Minnesota do. I just don't get it, man.
What are your thoughts? Before we get out of here, I want to get your thoughts on the national level on this crazy, crazy presidential election that we have going on right now. You listen to the show. I can't really pick a candidate right now or anything, but I would like for no one to win this election. I think that could be the best outcome for everyone. But what do you think about this crazy day we're living in with this on the national politics? We'll get to TJ's answer on that question coming up real soon. And then we'll also get to the beginning of everyone's favorite dumb bleep of the week in the next segment as well. Find Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app so you can listen every single day of the week when we want to. We'll see you soon. Dumb bleep of the week.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States is demanding that Israel boost aid access to Gaza and warns that failure to do so would risk cutting off some U.S. military assistance. In a letter, the Biden administration instructed its Middle East ally to act within 30 days on a series of concrete measures, expressing deep concern about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the war-torn Palestinian territory. From Washington, Benji Haya reports.
This letter amounts to the strongest known written warning yet from the White House, urging the Israeli government to allow for a greater distribution of aid in Gaza for at least the next 4 months. Israel's ground offensive has forced millions of Palestinians to evacuate their homes to temporary camps, exposing them to dangerous diseases. Last month, its army denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between North and South Gaza. US law prohibits sending weapons to countries that prevent the delivery of American humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, the World Food Programme says that all major crossings into the north of the Gaza Strip have been closed, with no food aid having entered the area since October the 1st. Jody Jacobs has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The World Food Programme says the last remaining food supplies in the north have all been distributed to shelters and health facilities, but adds that it is not sure how long it will last, as no fresh supplies have entered since the beginning of October. The Israeli military insists that its operations are targeting terrorist infrastructure embedded inside civilian areas, adding that it is in fact facilitating humanitarian and particularly medical aid to residents.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are spending the coming hours bouncing between battleground states as the U.S. presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. Vice President Harris will head to Michigan, while the former president's set to touch down in Illinois and Georgia. U.S. correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
With the race for the White House on a knife edge, Donald Trump is headed to Chicago for an interview about the economy before rallying in Georgia, a state that Joe Biden narrowly won by just 0.3% in 2020. It follows an event for Mr. Trump which veered wildly off script after 2 audience members required medical assistance after passing out. The former president decided to stop taking questions. Instead, for half an hour, he stood dancing and swaying to rock music. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is attending an event in Detroit with the radio show The Breakfast Club and one of its hosts, Charlemagne the God. The show is popular with black voters, a demographic critical to the vice president's election hopes.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
What's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? We are back, Liberty Unite, with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. We are talking to TJ Hawthorne, who is running for Minnesota House as a libertarian, and I just asked him about what he thinks about this whole national election situation.
In this case, Chase Oliver is getting almost zero media attention, even though he's got a lot of great things to say. You and I both know exactly where we stand on why we don't support Chase. I chatted with Chase. He came to our convention and I got to sit and have good conversations with him. And I think it's an interesting conundrum that we have that, boy, you can say 90% of all these great things that every libertarian would definitely say yes. But then you start talking about this cultural thing that is extremely important to a lot of us, and you just turn me off 100%, brother. And I'm sorry that that's happening. Now, yeah, the whole thing with Biden and then the coup to get Kamala in there and all this stuff that's happening, it blows my mind to see guys like Howard Stern and these media folks that would rip that apart if it was anything on the other side. But it's happening, and they're cheering, and they're just so happy and lovely about it. It's so obvious to guys like you and me. It's just so obvious, but then it makes it that much tormenting to see that folks are really going along with it. And it's quite a black pill, but what do you do?
All right. Well, so why don't you give everyone where they can go to find out more information about you, maybe go and donate or, follow you on X and all that. Give everyone all that information real quick.
Oh, I don't want anybody's money anymore. The election's too close, and I have no intention of spending any more money. But TJForLiberty.com, the TJFOR Liberty.com is the website, and at TJ Hawthorne 44B is my Twitter handle, and TJ Hawthorne 444 or MN44B is the Facebook page. I'm not all that active. I do like to go on the Twitter, but that's not very local. You know what I mean? And that's what race I'm at is local. But there are a few local guys that I like to chit chat with here and there.
I just want to point out, I've never heard a political candidate tell people not to donate to their campaign.
Yeah,
before. That's one of the more libertarian responses I've ever heard when someone asked about where they could go to donate is, I'm not taking any more money from anyone. That's like the most libertarian answer I've ever heard.
Donation page is open, but I don't want you to spend. I'd much rather, if you have the opportunity, I'm going to have a boots on ground event this weekend. Going to have some volunteers go drop some lit, knock on some doors. I think that's the only effective way for a state representative campaign. Yeah, if I had more money in the beginning, I could have paid for some ads and made some commercials or done some crap like that. But I don't even know. I think when folks just need to meet me and see who I am, and that's my goal.
Yeah,
and I've never quit is the hashtag that we're trying to say. Hey, we're not giving up. We're not going to give up and jump ship to the Republicans. Definitely not going to be a Democrat.
Definitely not going to do that. TJ, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for listening to the show. I mean, it's great always to meet and talk to people, listen to the show. I appreciate that, and I really appreciate your time today. And anyone who lives in this district, go out there and punch your vote or click the button or whatever, however it is that you guys vote up there in Minnesota. Do that thing for TJ. So thank you so much for your time today, man.
Thank you, Nate. I really do appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks so much once again to TJ for joining us. If you happen to live in Minnesota House District 44B, you have an opportunity to vote for a libertarian. That's TJ Hawthorne. So check that out. We're going to switch over now to Dumb Bleep of the Week. What does bleep stand for? I have no idea. We just said it because it kind of rhymes with week. I mean, you can insert your own word. It's bleeped out. It doesn't have to be a bad word. It's up to you. But anyway, this is where we make fun of all of the crazy things that we see online. Finally, we get to do that. That's with our show, Good Morning Liberty, which you can find on your favorite podcast app. You can watch on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey. And if you want to be involved in the voting process, which you will hear at the end of this episode, then you want to go to joingml.com and join the Fed Haters Club in our private Discord channel. It is the best day of the week.
For most people, that's what they think.
All week we put off making fun of idiots.
That's
we
not
hardly
true.
ever
We
make
don't.
fun of anyone.
No.
It's all rainbows and unicorns all week. And then finally on Fridays we get to let loose and finally make fun of some people's dumb ideas.
This is the day where people who are beholden to the greedy capitalists, peak capitalism, they look forward to this day where they can cut out of work early, shut their laptop early, slam it closed.
Slam it.
Until Monday morning.
Exactly.
You get 2 and a half fresh days of whatever you want to do.
Gonna be
Probably
good.
thinking about next week's work.
Yeah, probably. I'm going up to Illinois to see some family.
And on top of that,
I'll be doing that.
You get an episode of The Dumbest Things that the good people have found across the interwebs.
Most of the dumbs this week came from the live group, which we also call the Fed Haters Club. JoinGML.com.
Look,
you want to
if you
join
got
that.
hate in your heart, you let it out.
Yeah. If you got dumb in your heart, let it out too. And so they post those in that channel, and then we put them all together. We have 11 submissions that made it to the final cut today. I think 8 of them came from the Fed Haters Club. So thanks so much for those submissions today. They're going to vote at the end of the episode. We'll see who wins Dumb Bleep of the Week. They'll go to the tournament at the end of the year, Dumb Bleep of the Year, and then we will crown the dumbest thing of the year of our Lord 2024, and we will send that person a trophy that says they were the dumbest person of 2024. And I'm sure they will open it and display it on their mantle as soon as it arrives. That's what's going to happen.
Amen.
All right, Charlie, do you understand the rules?
I do.
Okay. Well, that's normally you say no, so I guess we finally explained it. Number 1, PSA, public service announcement for everyone, just so you know, okay? Climate change fueled heat is especially deadly when mixed with meth in the summer months, okay? So we're getting this information out there to the people before you think, like back in the good old days, like 20 years ago, before climate change, when you used to go out on the sidewalk and do meth. I know there's a bunch of you listening right now, and you're about to shoot your meth. How do you do meth? You shoot it, I guess. Is that what you do?
Smoke it.
Smoke meth. You
Snort
shoot.
it.
I don't. You do all kinds of
Shoot
stuff. These people, they don't care. They'll take it anyway. Okay. Now, back in the good old days, you used to just do
Live
your
group
meth.
said summers are for fentanyl. Winter is for meth.
Yes. That's the point here. Meth it does bad things. Now, that used to be fine, but nowadays it's dangerous for people doing meth out there because
of climate change,
human-caused climate change.
Yep.
Just so you know. On just one sweltering day during the hottest June on record in Phoenix, a 38-year-old man collapsed under a freeway bridge, and a 41-year-old woman was found slumped outside a business. Both had used methamphetamine before dying from an increasingly dangerous mix of soaring temperatures and stimulants. Meth is showing up more often as a factor in the deaths of people who died from heat-related causes.
I wonder why.
I feel like it was the meth, but I guess it's the heat or whatever. According to an Associated Press analysis of data from the U.S., the CDC, death certificates show about 1 in 5 heat-related deaths in recent years involved meth. And that's interesting because we hear about heat-related deaths going up because of climate change. I wonder what happens if you remove the meth. Are heat-related deaths actually down?
Looks to be about
right now.
You would have a 20% reduction.
Yeah.
If there's 1 in 5.
You probably would. So if deaths aren't up by more than that from heat, then you just take out the meth. But you see, we want to go back to a world where you can safely do your meth on the streets, on the sidewalks of Phoenix, Arizona.
Nate from the Fed Haters Club said, "Oh no, not the meth heads. Climate change is truly indiscriminate."
Take my eyes, but not the meth heads. Now listen, you should be free to do whatever drug you want to put in your body as long as you're not harming someone else. You can
I don't
harm
recommend
yourself.
it.
That's totally fine. We do not recommend it. We do not endorse meth. Unless it's the kind that I take in pill form every single morning. What do you think keeps me up, Slick? That's what I take every single day. Meth is more common in heat-related deaths. I was quoting Wedding Crashers, and you went to. Okay.
Yeah.
Meth is more common in heat-related deaths than the deadly opioid fentanyl. As a stimulant, it increases body temperature, impairs the brain's ability to regulate body heat, and makes it harder for the heart to compensate for extreme heat. So
increases your blood pressure and increases your heart rate.
You just can't.
It's a stimulant.
You just can't do meth safely on the streets anymore like you used to be able to because of human-caused climate change. Okay, let's move to Dumb Bleep number 2. This one will be pretty easy. Like I said, there's 11, but
It's funny how they
It's
didn't
like
blame
actually 11.
They didn't blame meth first.
No.
It was climate change first.
It's climate
Then
change.
meth.
You know.
Yeah.
Plus, the meth is fine. It's when you add in climate change that's the problem.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris called in. She was talking about people price gouging. Okay. Now, one thing I saw was she called into the Weather Channel, which when you're looking at the Weather Channel to see whether or not you're going to die, you typically want a presidential candidate to call in and talk to you about things. This is a clip from CNN where she's talking about price gouging in the wake of Hurricane Milton. And all I can come up with is apparently she wants people to go without any products or services. She doesn't want people to get anything at all. She just wants it all to be gone and for you to not be able to find something, even if it is more expensive. But here is her talking to business owners who are considering following the laws of supply and demand.
Helene. Finally, as the president mentioned, to any company that or individual that might use this crisis to exploit people who are desperate for help through illegal fraud or price gouging, whether it be at the gas pump, the airport, or the hotel counter, know that we are monitoring these behaviors and the situation on the ground very closely, and anyone taking advantage of consumers will be held accountable. The bottom line is this hurricane poses an extreme danger, and we urge everyone in Florida to take
They are watching. Now I just can't stand for this kind of stuff.
Big brother.
Yeah.
Or big sister.
I can't stand for it because she's like, well, they're exploiting people, by raising these prices. Technically, they're exploiting them right now, currently, in areas everywhere where they use market pricing, I guess, because it's determined by supply and demand. And when a storm comes through or a hurricane comes through, the same laws of supply and demand apply. It's why it's so important to even defend something like what people call price gouging. They give it a name like price gouging because that's bad. You don't want to gouge.
Fraud.
Gouging is bad. And no one likes to be gouged. Who's ever like, I got gouged today. It was awesome.
Yeah.
No one
What a
says
great
that.
day.
What a great day.
What happened today, son? Well, I got gouged at school. It was
not
awesome.
Good. It's not good when you use that word gouging. But really, they're just responding to supply and demand. And when the supply is really low, for instance, a truck full of fuel can't get to your gas station for like a week or two.
To replenish the
supply. So then the supply is short. Well, it's like a shortage of those things. But the demand, it could stay the same or it could even go up because everyone's trying to fill up their tanks so they can get to safety. Okay? And so they're trying to fill up their tanks.
To have enough gas to run their generator, depending on how much time
generators
they think the power is going to be out.
And so you want to ration it by raising the price and making sure that people only buy exactly what they need. Okay? If they need 10 gallons to make it through this amount of time, or if they need 10 gallons to drive up to northern Florida to get to safety or something like that in their car, you want to make sure that that's all that they get. And that's the way that you actually ration these things. Now, they would like everyone to be given these ration cards or someone from the government to be standing there with a clipboard writing down how much gas you're allowed to buy and all that. Like we had toilet paper rationing and stuff during COVID, can't buy more than one or whatever the numbers were. They want to do that, but it needs to be rationed by price. And so when people make these arguments, what they're saying is, I would rather people not be able to get this good than for people.
Well, no, that's not it. I'd rather for a small amount of people to completely destroy the supply so that it's not available to anyone else.
Yeah.
For the time period in which the supply can't be replenished.
Which could lead to people dying. So what she's actually saying is that I want people to die because I don't like prices to go up.
Well, and they flipped the moral high ground because, in people's mind, I understand you're going to the gas station and you're like, oh my God, $20 a gallon. This is ridiculous. Because in your mind, you've been paying, $2 to $5.
Yeah.
And so you're like, what? This is crazy. But you have to realize that they've taken the moral high ground, but really the moral high ground resides with the basic laws of economics and the rudimentary law of supply and demand, and that it's actually most beneficial for the most amount of people to be able to regulate scarce resources by raising the price.
Mm-hmm. You want the market to regulate
and that
those
helps
resources.
the most amount of people.
It does. It does. And what people really have to realize is that, oh, this is crazy. I was paying $3 a gallon yesterday, and right now it's $20 a gallon. You were paying supply and demand based pricing both times. When it's $3 a gallon, are they price gouging you? Like, is that what's happening? Are you price gouging them? Were you price gouging them during COVID when you didn't want to pay more than $1.80 a gallon on average around the country? Was that you price gouging? Like, no, that was supply and demand. It goes both ways. We were fine when it got really cheap during COVID, and you got to be fine when it gets really expensive when there is a low supply and a really high demand. And when you refuse to make arguments in favor of that, that gets really dangerous. You know, when you're scared to argue in favor of supply and demand, it doesn't have to be moral. It doesn't have to be a moral high ground. It's just science. It's just economics. That's all. It's just supply and demand. That's the great thing about free market economics. It doesn't even have to be moral. It does the most moral thing just by default. It does it. That's great. But it doesn't have to be because the gas station owner wants to help the most amount of people get the gas that they need. It just happens naturally, which is great. That the most moral outcome is the byproduct of free market economics. But of course, 35 states have laws against price gouging because
good discussion happened in the Fed Haters Club, by the way. Someone says the goal is to ration the amount. They should just ration the amount. And the response to that was, but how do you determine how much is the amount you can buy?
The different people need different amounts.
Yeah.
You know,
the way that we determine that in the market is through pricing.
Yeah.
The invisible hand, so to speak.
Right? The thing, like, you can't decide that everyone needs the same amount. Maybe someone has family up in central Georgia that they want to drive to, and they need more gas than the one who has family in Tallahassee or something like that they want to drive to. And so those two people need different amounts of gas. And the way that you determine that is prices. That's just the way. That's the way that we do it all the time. It's the way we're doing it right now. There's no reason for it to change. Dumbly number 3 is going to be called photo ops. It's really just the fakeness that happens during these photo ops. We're sticking on the hurricane here for a minute. Did you see this one? Luckily,
by the way, did you have Kamala Harris's hot mic situation during that little CNN thing?
No, I didn't have when she was doing the briefing with FEMA and all that.
No, she was on that same panel.
Oh, was that? Yeah. That panel. No, I didn't bring that.
I did see something. I saw something. I don't know if it's true or not, but she said something about this is a live interview.
Yeah, it was her staffers trying to give her questions and talking points and basically trying to tell her what to say while she was on a live interview.
Yeah.
And so she covered her mouth like to do is like I'm on a live interview. You know, like that was gonna, make it to where no one could hear her. Like what's funny is like she thinks that they could hear her say that, but not the microphone that picks up all the noise that happens when you're talking.
Yeah.
Those are the same things.
It would have been better to cover up the microphone,
Yeah, you want to cover the mic, not your mouth. That's the way that you want to do it.
It would have been funny if you saw her put on a mask.
Yeah. Now magically the microphone can't hear me, but the people can. That's the way you should do it. So she was helping. She joined the Hurricane Helene relief efforts. I don't know if the dumb really goes to Kamala Harris here because you sort of have to do these things as a politician.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw Trump throwing out rolls of paper towels into a crowd. It was like, oh my God, if he wouldn't have been there to throw those rolls of paper towels out, those people would have been able to clean up their mess on their countertop,
Yeah.
And so I think the dumb really goes to people because they only do this because for some reason voters want to see this.
Yeah.
And so that's where my dumb submission.
Like everybody on the right is so happy that Trump showed up first.
Yeah. Like that's important.
Yeah.
Why does it matter?
A lot of times it causes more harm than good because you have to block off roads and like you've got Secret Service everywhere and you can't travel freely.
Mm-hmm.
Like it actually causes a disruption.
You ever tried to drive through Nashville when Trump was in town?
You
they
can't.
Close down roads all over the place. It's a mess when these people come to town.
When they're in town, I just stay home.
Yeah.
I don't want to go anywhere.
But it's like they do it because somehow it scores political points with the people. And so it just kind of seems like the people are dumb. But here she is packing Ziploc bags with toothpaste and deodorant and everything. So here's that happening. Now answer me this. Is she needed to do this?
No, look at there's all these people
there's other people standing around watching her.
This must be a union charity.
Yeah. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to be there. And she brings all this, she brings all of her Secret Service with her, and there's people with cameras there doing all this. And so, like I said, it's not really on Kamala for this video because it's something that a politician has to do because the people demand it, because they're so dumb that like seeing this makes them feel better. Like this person cares. And it's kind of a great representation of everything the government does because this person cares because they're doing that right there, but they're not needed to do that. They're not actually helping you by being there doing this. In fact, they're actually hurting you more than likely. They made the entire process slower than what it would have been, but you feel better because they're showing you that they are helping you. And so this right here is just a microcosm of everything that the government does is trying to show you that they're helping while they're actually hurting you. So there's that video, and this one's unrelated to the hurricane. The next one, we'll just do, this one's still called photo ops. So we're still on dumb bleep number 3, I think. I'm sick of people acting like politicians are real people. I'm sick of people acting like they're normal people. And I'm sick of them trying to pretend like they're normal people. Just admit it. Like you had a cushy life. Everything was fine. You grew up in a middle class family. Okay.
Yep.
You've never used a shovel a day in your life. Okay. Can we?
That's okay. Not everybody has to use shovels.
You clearly never helped your husband bury one of his hookers. Okay. She never helped with that. Yeah. We can tell. And so I'm sick of people pretending like they're real people. Watch her use a shovel.
Killed 1,200, resulting in 250 Israelis getting kidnapped. 100 of them remain captive to this very day. We'll have more to this.
Now, Doug, he's buried enough hookers to know how to use a shovel, okay? We know that.
What is she doing? I never know what she's doing.
It's the most awkward thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe your staff needs to be like, hey, do you know how to use a shovel?
If not, let me show you how to just hold it real quick.
There's cameras all out there, and you're going to be using like a legit shovel out here. Have you ever held one in your entire life? Has that ever happened? You know? Yeah. And just the whole fakeness around it, like they're planting a tree. You could have had some other guy plant that tree, okay? They don't need to plant a tree. That's not proof that they care about whatever it is they're commemorating because they're planting a tree right now. It's all the fakeness around all these ceremonies. Oh, he laid a wreath. Yeah. He cares, you know. He didn't need to do that. It's ridiculous. These people are fake, y'all.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States is demanding that Israel boost aid access to Gaza and warns that failure to do so would risk cutting off some U.S. military assistance. In a letter, the Biden administration instructed its Middle East ally to act within 30 days on a series of concrete measures, expressing deep concern about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the war-torn Palestinian territory. From Washington, Benji Hire reports.
This letter amounts to the strongest known written warning yet from the White House, urging the Israeli government to allow for a greater distribution of aid in Gaza for at least the next 4 months. Israel's ground offensive has forced millions of Palestinians to evacuate their homes to temporary camps, exposing them to dangerous diseases. Last month, his army denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between North and South Gaza. US law prohibits sending weapons to countries that prevent the delivery of American humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, the World Food Programme says that all major crossings into the north of the Gaza Strip have been closed, with no food aid having entered the area since October the 1st. Jody Jacobs has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The World Food Programme says the last remaining food supplies in the north have all been distributed to shelters and health facilities, but adds that it is not sure how long it will last, as no fresh supplies have entered since the beginning of October. The Israeli military insists that its operations are targeting terrorist infrastructure embedded inside civilian areas, adding that it is in fact facilitating humanitarian and particularly medical aid to residents.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are spending the coming hours bouncing between battleground states as the US presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. Vice President Harris will head to Michigan, while the former president's set to touch down in Illinois and Georgia. US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
With the race for the White House on a knife edge, Donald Trump is headed to Chicago for an interview about the economy before rallying in Georgia, a state that Joe Biden narrowly won by just 0.3% in 2020. It follows an event for Mr. Trump which veered wildly off script after 2 audience members required medical assistance after passing out. The former president decided to stop taking questions. Instead, for half an hour, he stood dancing and swaying to rock music. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is attending an event in Detroit with the radio show The Breakfast Club and one of its hosts, Charlamagne the God. The show is popular with black voters, a demographic critical to the vice president's election hopes.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, more about the situation in the Middle East from a veteran observer of events in the region.
The Netanyahu policy of security at any cost isn't working.
That is Lord Peter Ricketts, a former senior British diplomat who chaired the UK's Joint Intelligence Committee under Prime Minister Tony Blair.
After a year of devastating attacks on Gaza, they have still not got military dominance over Hamas. Now, with the war in southern Lebanon, I'm old enough, I'm afraid, to remember the 1982 war where Israel made a major ground invasion of Lebanon, went all the way to southern Beirut, were there in the south for 18 years after that, then again in 2006. I think the Israelis understand that time is against them in southern Lebanon, hence this sense of real urgency, whatever it takes, whatever the civilian consequences, to do the maximum damage to Hezbollah without being dragged into an occupation which will then put up Israeli casualties. I think, therefore, that there is a time limit there. But the way the Israelis respond to the Iranian missile attack, do they go after economic sites like oil and gas? Do they go after nuclear sites? My own feeling is they probably will not. I think the Americans are pushing very hard against that. And the Israelis know that they cannot alone destroy the Iranian nuclear program.
And the UN on Monday accused Israel of trapping Palestinian civilians in northern Gaza. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The US is demanding Israel boost aid access to Gaza, warning failure to do so would risk cutting off some US military assistance. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are bouncing between battleground states as the US presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. And NASA has launched a spacecraft to Jupiter's frozen moon, Europa, to look at whether the distant world has conditions suitable to support life. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Welcome back to the ONN Presidential Democrat Kiosk Debate. If you're just tuning in, tonight, in an historic first, Americans can ask any question at any time just by stepping into one of the thousands of Democrat kiosks we've placed in front of 7-Elevens across the country. Decatur, Illinois, let your voice be heard.
Hi, everybody. My name's Joe Crawford, and my question is, how many taco and cheese taquitos do you think I can eat in 60 seconds?
Kevin, have we screened all of these? We haven't? But we can? We can't. Great. Straight from the heart of America, raw and unfiltered, Rockville, Maryland, to Boulder, Colorado.
This is the most powerful sword in the planet.
So, we really can't screen these things, Kevin? Not at all. Okay, then I think I'll just ask a question of my own. What's that? Okay, no, I won't. Austin, Texas.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. What's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome back to the top of the hour. We're in the middle of Dumb Bleep of the Week. Make sure you follow us on all of your favorite podcast apps under the name Good Morning Liberty. Right now, we are Liberty at Night. Every single day, we are Good Morning Liberty. Like us, you guys are probably concerned that your privacy is being attacked by people on the radical left. The deep state's invading individuals' private messages and targeting them based on their political affiliation. That's why we've partnered with Freedom Chat, a private social messaging app that believes privacy is a fundamental human right. Freedom Chat offers true end-to-end encryption, built-in screenshot protection to ensure that no one can screenshot your conversations, no storage of messages on their servers, and no commercial use of user data. This is the app that we trust, and it's the app that we rely on, especially as we approach the election. Some people will stop at nothing to maintain power, making privacy protection more important than ever. You can download the app right now by going to freedomchat.com/GML. We're such a fan of Freedom Chat that we've created our own private channel, which you can subscribe to for exclusive content, including never-before-seen images, videos, and posts. Simply download the app, search for our channel, Good Morning Liberty, and subscribe. No one can see the channels you're subscribed to or the posts you react to. It's your own private news feed. And if you're on Android, you can subscribe to their wait list by going to freedomchat.com/GML. Speak freely and message privately with Freedom Chat. Again, download the app today and subscribe to our channel at Good Morning Liberty for exclusive posts and never before seen content. That's freedomchat.com/GML. Elizabeth Warren had a dumb post yesterday, and this is the one I actually expanded on the most because I promise you I'm going to get to the punchline of how this is going to affect your life. Okay? It's going to have to do with price gouging and price controls. But she's mad about this grocery store called Stop and Shop, which we don't have around here, but they're elsewhere in America, okay? She says, right now, shoppers in Jamaica Plain are paying 30% off for this. 30% for the sorry, it's still in ad mode right there. Are paying 30% for the same frozen pizza as shoppers in Dedham or Dedham, however you want to say it. That's just not right.
30% more, 30% less.
It's 30% more. She didn't put that. They're paying 30% more for the same frozen pizza as shoppers in Dedham. That's just not right. I'm pressing Stop and Shop on how they set prices because we've got to make sure big companies aren't ripping families off. And what we have here is a story that, thank God, I've read about this about 15 times now in basic economics, where you have a lower income neighborhood and the store is actually charging higher prices on some of the goods in that neighborhood. And the inference here is that somehow they're price gouging lower income people when they go to the grocery store, the shop, which when you just think about business tactics and you take all of the other factors out of there,
that's stupid.
It makes no sense whatsoever. No. That literally makes no sense. Okay. And the higher income neighborhoods, you could probably get away with charging more in those areas than you could in the lower income neighborhoods if all things are equal, but they're not all equal. Well, let me tell you about this story a little bit. A study found that some Stop and Shop locations in Massachusetts charge higher prices in areas with lower median income, and now state lawmakers are demanding answers about a company's practices. Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, Jim McGovern, and Ayanna Pressley sent a 4-page, strongly worded letter to Stop and Shop leaders after a group of teen volunteers from the Hyde Square Task Force found that there are price discrepancies at different store locations. Can you believe such a thing? Raising concerns about price gouging. The study, the results of which were first published last year, found that the grocer was charging more in urban neighborhoods than their suburban counterparts. Stop and Shop could be engaging in corporate profiteering schemes that squeeze residents and families in Massachusetts, said Warren, who pressed for details on what is impacting the price differences and what the company is doing about it. Now, this is a person who wants to control every aspect of your life, Elizabeth Warren, okay? And she's either lying or she has absolutely no grasp of basic economic concepts whatsoever. I don't think that Elizabeth Warren is a complete idiot, but you can come up with a list of reasons why things might cost more at this other grocery store very quickly. Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about the lease payments are higher, probably?
Well, it's closer to the city center. Yeah. So they could potentially have higher prices, but that's not the only reason. They talk about different products that I
can explain what happens right here in Williamson County.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go to Franklin, like the city of Franklin, everything is more expensive there.
Yeah.
Gas is usually 30 to 50 cents more per gallon.
Yeah.
Okay. Grocery store prices are higher. The reason being is that Franklin City has a special tax. The city of Franklin adds a special tax for the school district. Of course, it's for the kids outside of Williamson County. So your property taxes are higher. They have a special sales tax. Everything in Franklin is more expensive.
The land is more valuable itself, meaning that the land see, I heard someone the other day, they were like, I saw the gas in Franklin and it was like almost $1 more than it is at this gas station in Antioch. They're just doing that because that's where rich people are and they know they can get more money. Some.
Yes.
A little
partly,
bit. But also, how much more expensive is it to put a building on a plot of land in Franklin versus how expensive it is to put it on a plot of land in Antioch?
And pay extra taxes to the city.
That's likely not even the main reason in this scenario. They went through different products, by the way, and this is where it starts to get fuzzy because they picked their own specific products, okay? Meaning that just by doing that, you can create whatever narrative you want to create. Let's say a product is more popular in one area than it is in the other area. What if that means that store orders more of those products at that store? They probably get a bigger price break when they order more of that compared to when they have to order less of that specific product at another store, like turkey burgers being one of the things that they picked. Okay. Do you think turkey burgers are more popular in a affluent suburb of Boston, or are they more popular in a non-affluent, urban, different demographic area of Boston?
Okay, so which one did they get the price break when they ordered more? There's a question right there. They don't go into any of those kinds of details when they discuss these different products that they picked. Elizabeth Warren and the other 4 that wrote this letter did not go into any of those specific details.
Of course
it's just price gouging.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what happened. All right. Let me even show you these teens. Now, this is all Elizabeth Warren and these 4 other elected officials are just going off of this study that was conducted by these random teens that went around and picked out their own random groceries at these 2 grocery stores.
When you confirmed these suspicions, it was kind of flabbergasting in a way, because, you kind of go grocery shopping and you're just like, did I pay like $2 for this the other day at this location? But then you're just like, oh, maybe I'm just like remembering something the wrong way. But when you actually compare the receipts side by side and you see that you're spending 18% more in your own local neighborhood, you're just like astonished and confused as to why the prices have been different at the same store. As part of your investigation to find out why there's such a disparity in foods in different communities?
We have tried again and again to contact Stop and Shop and see why they market the way that they do. But unfortunately, due to several weeks and Stop Shop being a proprietary business.
All right, so you get the idea there. I'm going to...
Business.
Like that's going slow, kind of glitching out some. All right, let me get back to some of the facts. All right. The task force bought nearly identical grocery items at Stop and Shop locations in these 2 areas. They said that people would spend $34 more for the same grocery cart full of items. Of course, they picked the specific items. I'm going to tell you why this is really important here very, very soon, because right now it just sounds like I'm nitpicking something, but I'll tell you. Stop and Shop said that the Utes shopping list compared less than 1% of the 10,000 items sold at the stores in Jackson Square and Dedham, and that the overall price difference is less than the 21% the original study reported. The Utes' original study avoided items that were on sale to focus on items listed at regular price. However, Stop and Shop said in a statement that almost all of its sale items are equally priced across the entire chain. And I'm going to show you this. What do you think this is, Charlie?
Oh, this is a map.
This is a map. You are correct.
Yeah.
This is a crime map.
Mm.
Green is good, and then going towards red is bad. Okay. Which location do you think this is?
That's Dedham.
That's Dedham.
Mm-hmm.
This is the more affluent, higher, median income community. Let me show you a different map of the Jamaica Plain store.
Mm.
This is the Jamaica Plain store. There you go. This is almost entirely red.
That's a map too.
Also, yes.
Yeah.
It is also a map. These are crime maps. And almost the entire area around this store is in different shades of red. Almost the entire area around the Dedham store is in different shades of green, moving to yellow. There is one little orange area over there around it on the map. So here's another thing that happens. What if you have higher crime? What if you have higher crime? What if you have higher theft at your grocery stores because of the higher? What if in a lower income neighborhood that is a higher crime neighborhood has more theft from the grocery store than the one that's in a higher income?
So to make the same profit margin, you may have to up the prices.
You might have to raise the prices on certain things. What if you have to hire more security at your store? What if that's also a thing? Okay. There are so many different ways that explain why urban areas have higher price goods than suburban areas. So many different ways. But what these people have stuck on is that it is price gouging. And they say, thankfully, federal policymakers are honing in on this corporate malpractice. Just last month, Vice President Kamala Harris called for a federal ban on corporate price gouging on food and groceries, in addition to a bunch of other stuff. And so according to someone like Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey and whoever else it is, the Ayanna Pressley and McGovern was the other person in this. This is an example of corporate price gouging on a local level that the federal government is going to need to pay attention to and have laws that come in and fix. And all it is a simple fact that there are different expenses to go into running grocery stores in different areas. And this idea that they're not going to control prices, that they're just going to look after price gouging, is going to filter all the way down to basic economic facts about different locations that that the same grocery store chain might have, even in a given city, and not take into account the crime, stuff like that, this is price gouging.
Hey,
That's how far down this goes.
At least they're asking the different lease prices between Jamaica Plains and Dedham.
Mm-hmm.
So seems as if these senators or, government officials are asking for information.
A little bit of information, yeah. A little bit of that. Let's move on to Dumbly at number 6. Kind of a funny one here. This is Politico debate analysis. Very important stuff. Politico mag. I got a mag. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us the difference between their analysis of the different facial features between Vance and Walz.
Yes. Vance's beard matters, they say. Vance is the first White House wannabe to wear facial hair in 80 years. Research indicates that voters see beards as more masculine. That can be positive to some, but to others, especially women, it can be negative, conveying aggression and opposition to feminist ideals. Walz, on the other hand, Walz's wide eyes showed his passion. Eye-popping can sometimes be a sign of surprise, but for Walz, it simply revealed his emotional intensity, like during an exchange about abortion. The dynamic and emphatic facial motion grabs the viewer's attention. For Walz, it gave extra weight to his feelings and held our gaze.
I love how beards can convey aggression and opposition to feminist ideals for some women. I love it.
Josh said, pray like expression. He does look like he's about to get murdered.
He does.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous. Okay, that's a quick and easy one for number 6. Number 7 is more complicated because it has to do with FEMA. The people that take care of us when there's a disaster from the U.S. government. And it's got to be nuanced here because the talking point right now is, number 1, FEMA's out of money. And of course, we just had a Hurricane Helene come through North Carolina. Terrible, terrible stuff going on. It's over 200 people now confirmed. And there's still hundreds, still a lot of people missing. Still a lot of people missing. So it's really bad. Different parts.
I saw some different stories, like this mother who lost her child and her mother. They were on the roof of their house.
Yeah.
And it broke away from the foundation. And then they ran into some trees and power lines that
both her parents and son, Magoo said,
threw her in the water. That is some scary stuff.
That's terrible.
Like, could you imagine getting your family on top of the roof and then all of a sudden your house breaks away?
Yeah.
And then you're on a houseboat, but not a fun kind
not
of
the good
houseboat.
kind.
No.
And it's not made for that.
No.
It's not made for that at all. So Tim Kennedy says, Charlie?
All right. For the federal government to say that they don't have enough money to help Americans is a slap in the face to every working American and spitting in the face of every American currently in South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, and Hawaii.
Now, I agree with that. I do have to slightly push back on a certain talking point, which is that FEMA's out of money because they spent all this money on migrants. Now, they have spent a lot of money on migrants, but as government budgets go, there are separate categories. There's a category for their disaster relief. There's a category for whatever it is they call doing the migrant stuff too. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be spending the money that's in whatever the migrant category is, and that they should instead be able to shift that money over to the disaster relief portion of their budget. All right? But they are different portions of the budget. And they spent $650 million, I believe, last year. They spent 400 something. The year before is about $1.1 billion that FEMA has spent in the last 2 years. Their budget's $30 billion a year. All right, just so you know. It's a good talking point. It highlights the fact that our government does not have the proper priorities, the priorities that it should have. Of course, we give hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries, specifically Ukraine and Israel. All right, we know that. And then we've spent billions of dollars helping people
do what is still essentially against the law here in the United States, which is coming across the border illegally. All right. Now, Trump used FEMA money also for immigration, and people were mad about it. He used money for immigration, for border enforcement from FEMA, not for enforcing illegal immigration like what's being used in the last couple of years from FEMA. But it's not like that's why they don't have any money. They don't have any money because the government sucks at everything it does. That's why they don't have it.
Mismanagementism.
Mismanagementism. This is an example. They prioritize. They get a portion of the budget. A bunch of it's going towards these migrant centers and going out to different cities. FEMA sending money out to different states and cities so they can have all these shelters and all that.
Well, and then if there aren't any like natural disaster emergencies, there has to be an emergency that these people are working. So
yeah, got to be something.
It's got to be something.
And so what we should take away from this is that the government is really bad at everything it does. It's really bad with money. They have really bad priorities. And
they have to make sure they spend the whole budget so they get more.
You got to. So you want to call something a crisis as much as you can, an emergency in their case, as much as you can, incentivizes them to declare different emergencies around the country. And we do have bad priorities here. We send a bunch of money out to other people in other countries, and then when something bad happens here, and they're saying they don't have any money, and we look at our government budget, we're like, yeah, we don't have any money either. We're going to have to borrow it, or tax it, or inflate it. That's the only thing we can do. It's really sad that when something like this happens, one of these agencies is supposed to help comes up and says, yeah, nothing we can do. We ain't got the funds. Now, I think that private people do a better job anyway. I think private people have been doing a better job in this situation. I think the government has been trying to prevent private people from doing a good job in this situation. Yeah. We saw stories like the helicopter pilot who was threatened with arrest.
From a firefighter.
A firefighter or a fire official. I don't know if it was a firefighter, one of the guys that drives one of the nice Suburbans around, with the special plates on it or whatever. Threatened with arrest. So he actually, he brought someone, he rescued one person, left his son and another person that he rescued there because the helicopter was not able to take that much more weight. And that's when they stopped him and said, yeah, we're going to arrest you if you do this. So he's like, well, I got to go back at least and get my son. And so he went back and got his son and then left the other person that needed rescued, knows right where they are, not allowed to go back and rescue them. They probably sat there for another day or so before someone came and got them.
It's awful.
There's also, I saw the video of Pete Buttigieg going around saying that people weren't allowed to fly their private drones in the area. Well, they were using drones to go around and look for people that were on their rooftops or in different areas that were needing rescue. Now, they say that that's because the really nice drones can go high enough that they could end up, causing a crash or something with a plane or a helicopter or something like that. So there's different ways you can make arguments that something like that could make sense, or maybe they're just being going a little bit too far with it. Starlink offering free internet service to people that are in the area. Good Lord, that's amazing. Do you know what kind of a new world we're in where there's a disaster area that's that big?
You can get communications into
and you can still use the freaking internet, probably get 300 megabytes a second and like that. I mean, that's amazing, And the government,
get communications into a disaster area like that is incredible.
Yeah,
that's one of the toughest things about something like this is you don't have any information. It's impossible to get information, and so to have something like Starlink come along, that is huge.
So we'll move on from that. I just want to say I think the government should stop making it more difficult for private people to help. I think the private organizations have done a better job so far. The Red Cross, Salvation Army, those people come in. And I think those people are generally better suited to help people in times of need. Also, it'd be great is if they didn't take our National Guards and send them over to the Middle East. When something bad happens, then you got most of your National Guard over in the Middle East, like what happened in Tennessee. They sent them to the Middle East like that weekend, the weekend that it all happened, And maybe our National Guard should
they should be there in the state like they're supposed to be and helping the national portion and not the international police that we've become.
It's a landmark day in the March for Equality here in America. Congress passed the Casinos for Fairness Act today, which gives every mistreated group in America the right to open a casino.
It worked with Native Americans. It will work for the rest of the country. If our society has kept you down, you will get a casino to pull yourselves back up.
Veterans will also have the right to open a casino as a replacement for costlier benefit programs.
I think it'd be nice to have a casino. I mean, I'd rather still be able to walk, but, you know.
While the majority of the country is hailing the Casino Act as a step forward, many Native Americans are objecting to the law.
We are still the most disadvantaged group in America. So all that we ask is that we be allowed to open whorehouses and start legally selling cocaine.
The bill raised the question of whether immigrants should be allowed to own casinos. After much debate, the legislature decided that they would not, but they will be able to sell sliced mango on the street without a vendor license.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States is demanding that Israel boost aid access to Gaza and warns that failure to do so would risk cutting off some U.S. military assistance. In a letter, the Biden administration instructed its Middle East ally to act within 30 days on a series of concrete measures, expressing deep concern about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the war-torn Palestinian territory. From Washington, Benji Haya reports.
This letter amounts to the strongest known written warning yet from the White House, urging the Israeli government to allow for a greater distribution of aid in Gaza for at least the next 4 months. Israel's ground offensive has forced millions of Palestinians to evacuate their homes to temporary camps, exposing them to dangerous diseases. Last month, its army denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between North and South Gaza. US law prohibits sending weapons to countries that prevent the delivery of American humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, the World Food Programme says that all major crossings into the north of the Gaza Strip have been closed, with no food aid having entered the area since October the 1st. Jody Jacobs has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The World Food Programme says the last remaining food supplies in the north have all been distributed to shelters and health facilities, but adds that it is not sure how long it will last, as no fresh supplies have entered since the beginning of October. The Israeli military insists that its operations are targeting terrorist infrastructure embedded inside civilian areas, adding that it is in fact facilitating humanitarian and particularly medical aid to residents.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are spending the coming hours bouncing between battleground states as the U.S. presidential campaign enters its final 20 days. Vice President Harris will head to Michigan, while the former president's set to touch down in Illinois and Georgia. U.S. correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
With the race for the White House on a knife edge, Donald Trump is headed to Chicago for an interview about the economy before rallying in Georgia, a state that Joe Biden narrowly won by just 0.3% in 2020. It follows an event for Mr. Trump which veered wildly off script after 2 audience members required medical assistance after passing out. The former president decided to stop taking questions. Instead, for half an hour, he stood dancing and swaying to rock music. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is attending an event in Detroit with the radio show The Breakfast Club and one of its hosts, Charlamagne the God. The show is popular with black voters, a demographic critical to the vice president's election hopes.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
So we'll move on to number 8, which is going to have a lot to do with Tim Walz. We got 2 more, number 8, and then number 9 comes after that, just in case you were wondering. This has to do with Tim Walz and some of his debate responses. I'm going to start you off with the China question and him lying about being there for Tiananmen Square. I want to play his response and then show you an article that discusses His misspeaking. It's just constant misspeaking.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
By the way, the question is, why did you lie about being at Tiananmen Square when it happened? That was the question. Yeah. And she did a good job. This is one of the times where the moderator came in and was like, hey, by the way, this was the question. Can I get an answer on? I was shocked. I was shocked that they came back and still made him answer this, and it got so awkward.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests, went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Governor Walz.
Then he looks to Vance almost to like rescue him.
Yeah, please interject.
Say something here.
Interrupt me, please. Never interrupt your opponent. All right, here we go. I want to show you, this article that came from the group. Thanks for posting this. Tim Walz has a tendency to misspeak. It may hurt the campaign. This could also be known as lying, but it depends on which side of the political aisle you come down on. That's the problem.
I misspoke.
You know, I hate it when you get caught up in the rhetoric and you're a knucklehead and you just misspeak, and say that you were in New York on 9/11. Isn't that weird? I just hate when you say that. Now, he didn't say that, but what if someone does? It seems like that would be a lie. It's kind of something that you might remember. I don't know. He has a tendency to misspeak. Tim Walz has a problem misspeaking. Since being tapped as Kamala Harris's running mate, the folksy, plain misspeaking Minnesota governor has had to explain a growing number of inaccurate statements. I hate it when I get my life wrong. At times embellishments. When you make things up that didn't happen. About his past. They range from comments about his military service claims about his military service to his visit to Hong Kong more than 3 decades ago, clarifying that his family didn't specifically use in vitro fertilization. IVF, yes. It's unclear whether Walz's verbal errors I'm going to use this sometime in my life. I misspoke, will undercut his credibility with voters. But the need to continually clean up those claims could politically hurt Walz and Harris, who were locked in a tight race with Donald Trump. And in some cases, key members of Harris' circle weren't aware of some of the inaccurate statements until they became public despite the vetting process, according to 4 people familiar with the conversations who were granted an anonymity to discuss the matter. They talk about the military record. He repeatedly and inaccurately described himself as a retired command sergeant major, including in radio ads, but he never finished the final coursework to retire at such a rank. He did not retire at that rank. In 2018, he said he stated that he didn't want those weapons of war that I carried in war accessible to everyday Americans, but he, of course, misspoke on that because he was never deployed to a war zone. You know,
he did clean those guns.
That whole kind of thing. He cleaned them.
Yeah.
Yeah. He cleaned them. He peeled the potatoes. He did all kinds of stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that they have to continuously say he has a problem misspeaking, or he makes inaccurate statements, or he embellishes, they can't just say that he lied about things because it sounded better.
He's a liar.
He's a liar.
Yeah.
But they can't say that. Do you think for 1 second Politico would hesitate in calling Trump or Vance a liar about a specific thing? I'm sure they haven't. Sure, they've called him that a million times. But they come up, it's like they went to a thesaurus and they typed in the word lie, and then they use all the words that aren't lie.
All the synonyms.
and that's how they wrote the article. Oh my gosh. And then the other thing that Tim Walz did was the answer on censorship, which was spawned by J.D. Vance not wanting to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. But whatever, we won't talk about that. Here's that portion.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to...
All right, so that's an important clip right there. He just said threatening, and he said hate speech. All right. You do have a First Amendment right to hate speech. We're not in the UK right now. You do have a First Amendment for hate speech.
I hate you.
Yeah, I hate, just like people hate Donald Trump, or they hate Republicans, or they hate, like, what is hate speech? Yeah. You can't really define it. There's a specific group of people that apparently you can't say bad things about, but of course...
If I were to murder you, Nate, it would be because you're Japanese. Is that hate speech? Is there a racial motivation there?
Well, okay, that does sound like it's racially. It sounds like that'd be a hate crime. Actually, that's Asian hate.
If I were going to,
if you were going to, it would be for that reason.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's keep going.
I'm not going to. Just if I were to do it.
If you were,
yeah.
From speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
All right. You can yell fire in a crowded theater.
Mm-hmm. You can.
And this is annoying because this is a night where it turned out the moderators were fact-checking things, albeit in a very condescending manner. Like, let's move on, and I just want to let you know that at the end of that, you were wrong about this. These are my thoughts on it. All right, Governor Walz, here we go.
Yeah.
You know?
But we have to move on.
Yeah, but we got to move on. Your time is up.
Yeah.
And so you can yell fire in a crowded theater. That whole idea came from a portion of an opinion from like 100 years ago. I think this had to do with the Espionage Act, but I'm making that up right now. So don't tell your friends that had to do with the Espionage Act, okay? But I've read about this several times, and for some reason that's clicking with me right now. It could be entirely wrong. It was a portion of one justice's opinion. It was not anything binding inside of that opinion. And also there have been new Supreme Court cases since then that have defined what incitement is. And it's not yelling fire in a crowded theater. Now, Tim Walz should know that. He's the governor of a state. Okay. He should know that. He's an older gentleman who should know what the laws are and the country that he's running to be the vice president of. J.D. Vance should know that immediately off the top of his head, that you can, in fact, yell fire in a crowded theater. We all just dealt with all this censorship, and we probably heard people say fire in a crowded theater a billion times.
We know this censorship personally.
Yes. So I'm sure he does, or he knows several people that were affected by it. His running mate was kicked off of social media, stuff like that. He should know that. All right. We've probably heard people say, well, we can't yell fire in a crowded theater. I'm sure people have had to defend that before. So he should have known that. And then the moderators also should have known that as well. Like, that is just a flat out false statement that he just made. And keeping this narrative going that, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's just freaking annoying. He uses the hate speech thing, which is not constitutional at all. He's literally proposing censorship for hate speech in this answer right now.
As a guy who wants to be one of the leaders to try and protect your Bill of Rights.
A heartbeat away from being the president of the United States, and he's saying that you should censor hate speech. So that's not good. I don't like that. Do you like that? You don't like that, right?
No, I don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure. All right, number 9, John.
As much as I don't like you.
John, for being Asian. Yeah, I gotcha. John Kerry, this has been open in my browser all week, and I meant to talk about it every day this week. But this came from the World Economic Forum. Someone posted it in our Fed Haters Club as a submission as well. And this is John Kerry explaining the roadblock that the Constitution has put in their way of maintaining a consensus narrative with people. Used to send out the talking points to the 3 media channels that there were, and then you could essentially brainwash the entire nation at the same time, and you had no problems. That was fine. Yeah. And he is lamenting the fact that they can no longer do that in this clip. Here we go.
Which is why we need censorship.
Which is why you got to have censorship. Exactly.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social...
It's a crazy clip to me. That's why it went around all over the place.
First Amendment's the problem.
It is. It is a roadblock in the way of them censoring people that they don't like. Of course, they'll call it disinformation, whatever the specific thing is. But you can't trust them to decide what it is. And guess what? If Trump wins the election, I bet you people on the left wouldn't trust Trump to decide what's disinformation and what isn't, what is and what isn't, But the craziest part of that clip to me is him saying the quietest part out loud and actually just looking back to the good old days when they used to control the narrative so easily because there were a lot less people that people would get their information from. And he said it was so much easier to get a consensus in the country on something, then what he means is to manufacture a consensus. That's what he didn't say that word, but it used to be so much easier for the government, which he said used to be able to govern much more effectively and swiftly, because they were able to get a consensus. They were able to manufacture a consensus on whatever the given issue was. And now social media has put a roadblock. The First Amendment too.
People
put a
are
roadblock
questioning things.
and be able to do this. Yeah. So I'm sure some places people get their news from, it's not true, or they take one single point and they just run away with it like it's the biggest number one reason thing in the world, but you can't control that. Like, people have to have access to all the different forms of information. Good Lord, what would COVID have looked like if we didn't have social media? Even the censored social media that we had, where you could still see some things that the censors hadn't found yet. Can you imagine if we just had like NBC and CBS and ABC and Fox, and that was it?
That's it.
You couldn't look at anything at all, and they would just read whatever talking points the government, faxed over to them that day.
God.
Can you imagine what it would have looked like?
Less roadblocks.
We'd still be locked down right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd probably be in different wars because all of America would be behind the wars.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way they would tell you the story, we'd have to be killing brown people.
We'd probably be full on war with Iran right now, more than likely. We'd probably have troops on the ground in Ukraine. It'd be totally different. Who knows what other countries?
Yeah,
we'd
that's
be
what the live
fighting
group
with.
was saying. It would be 2003. How different would Iraq have been if we had social media back then?
Okay, let's get the votes in, everyone. Let's run through these. Time to get your votes in. Let me find. Wait, why is my? Oh, I just clicked on the Dumb Bleep of the Year voting channel. Number 1 was Make Them Riot. Number 2 was Kamala. Number 3, the Trump Bibles. Number 4, that Kamala ad with the everyday normal guy, just like me and you, who hates the government but's going to vote for Kamala. Number 5 was the Stop and Shop price gouging thing. Number 6, the debate analysis with the what was the beard? The aggressive beard. Anti-feminist,
stopping feminist ideals
beard, and the deep caring and feeling eyes that are about to pop out of your head. Number 7, FEMA. Number 8, Tim Walz, the censorship comments and the China response. Good Lord. Number 9, John Kerry. That's John Kerry.
It sounded a little bit like Paul Harvey there.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Okay. All right, get your votes in, everyone. Go do it.
All right, while you're voting, I'm going to tell you about the sponsors and the links of the show notes. Go visit them. We mentioned Factor, among several others. So go visit those. That's one way to support the show. You can also support the show by leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and sharing the show around. Share it with a friend, a family member, or foe. All the links are on the social medias. All you have to do is go share it from there. Share it from your podcast app. It's super simple.
You know what's super important, by the way? Just hitting like or commenting on something that you see of ours on social media. It's very important for the algorithm.
Just engage.
The engagement rate versus the impression rate, very important.
We like it when it's up.
So yeah, you want that to be up. That's what the algorithm's like.
Yeah, do
So
all
do
those
that.
things. If you want to support this show monetarily, there's an easy way to do that by going to joingmail.com or godhatesfeds.com, be part of the Fed Haters Club. And every week when we do Dumb Bleep of the Week, when we want to, you have the opportunity to vote for the dumbest thing of that week, which will be entered into the dumbest thing of the year, and someone gets a trophy. There was a clear winner this week, the debate analysis between Vance's beard and Waltz's eyes.
It can be positive for some, this is Vance's beard, but to others, especially women, it can be negative, conveying aggression and opposition to feminist ideals.
Yeah. That looks like a beard that stops abortions.
It does. That beard,
I'll tell you what,
that beard
this-
beats women. Let me
This
tell you what.
abortion thing is getting more out of control.
Yeah.
I thought the debate was bad, but then I think it's getting worse. We've talked about this before, but the amount of women that are raging right now because they don't have the opportunity to freely murder children inside the womb without consequence.
Yeah.
Is astounding. For part of the species that's supposed to be so nurturing and caring and that take care of dogs, better than they do like humans. It blows my mind.
Right now,
there's like no empathy or compassion.
I would settle for going back to that. It used to be a bad, terrible, awful thing that you did that you thought about for the rest of your life and you were disgusted and that made you depressed.
Yeah.
It was like this awful, terrible, immoral thing to do, but you had to do it for some reason or whatever. And now it's just like you want to get a tattoo for every one of them you kill. It's totally disgusting.
They've completely flipped the moral narrative.
Yeah, it's wild
on this.
And whose job it is? It's people who think that it's immoral. Because the problem is we got it to the states now. Got it to the states. And a bunch of states are still voting in a lot of abortion protections. The problem is the ideological battle has not been won on this by people who see it as immoral or murder or whatever. You can't just fix it with a law on its own. Like almost everyone agrees that it's terrible to murder another human being. Pretty much everyone agrees that, except for a very, very small percentage of the population.
Psychopaths.
Who ends up doing that, And right now it's like 50, 60% of the country or more totally fine with abortion. And if it was like that on murder, we'd probably have different laws on murder in this country because people wouldn't agree that they were moral laws. Because people will follow moral laws. They're easy for people to follow because they don't naturally want to break them, It's not the state stopping you from doing it. It's like your own morals that keep you from doing it. And right now, we don't have that moral foundation for whatever reason. For whatever reason, it's not there.
Yep.
And until that is fixed, the laws might stop some, potentially. In fact, there's been more since the overturning of Roe versus Wade because the people are pushing the pill so hard, Until that ideological battle is won, that moral battle is won, you're not going to do much about it. You're really not.
What do you guys think about this? I want to know your thoughts. Anyone listening right now, you can tag us on X and respond to that at Good AM Liberty. Make sure you're following us on X, by the way. Still feels weird to call it X, but whatever. Or you can also send one of us an email. You can send an email to Nate at goodmorningliberty.us or Charlie at goodmorningliberty.us. What your thoughts are on the abortion conversation that we just had or any of the other stuff that we talked about during Dumb Bleep of the Week. Remember that you need to follow Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. Remember that you can watch the videos on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, all those good things. But if you don't do that, that's fine, because we'll be right back here again next Tuesday night as Liberty at Night, not Good Morning Liberty like we are every other day. If you want to join the Fed Haters Club so you can throw in submissions, though, join gmail.com. We'll see you guys again next Tuesday night.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too,
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous.